You've probably seen snow before, maybe even lived through a rough winter or two, cold mornings, frozen windshields, streets turned quiet under a white blanket. But none of that quite prepares you for what happened in the winter of 1836. In that year, high in the Rocky Mountains, snow fell so deep that hundreds of trappers lost the simple ability to find their own cabins. Landmarks disappeared, trails vanished, familiar ground became a blank, endless white. Some men starved slowly, some froze where they stood, some boiled their own boots, cutting the leather into strips and chewing them until there was nothing left to chew. This is the story of how a small number of mountain men survived what would later be remembered as the deadliest winter in American frontier history. If stories like this keep you company late at night, if they help quiet your thoughts as the world settles down, you might consider subscribing. And if you feel like it, you can leave a comment with where you're listening from right now, your city, the time. It's always interesting to see how far these quiet stories travel while the rest of the world sleeps. At this moment, you're probably somewhere warm, maybe wrapped in a blanket, maybe sinking slowly into a pillow that knows the shape of your head. There's water within arm's reach, food just a room away, safety in small ordinary forms surrounds you. That's not where we're going tonight. Tonight, we're stepping back into a world where survival demanded choices you never imagined making. A world where the mountains weren't beautiful or inspiring. They were hostile, patient, constantly testing you, and where the only thing standing between a man and death was his own stubborn refusal to stop breathing. So take a breath, get comfortable, let your body settle, because you're about to spend a winter in the Rocky Mountains with some of the toughest men who ever lived. And by the time morning comes, you'll understand, quietly and clearly, what survival really costs. The smell hits you first, not the snow, not yet. It's the smell of the air itself. It's September of 1836, and you're standing on the banks of the Green River in a place that will someday be called Wyoming. Right now it has no real name, just land. Endless, trackless wilderness stretching out in every direction, until the mountains rise up and swallow the horizon. The river moves steadily beside you, catching the early morning light, flowing the way it always has, indifferent to who stands on its banks. Your name is Elijah Morgan. You're 23 years old. You've been in these mountains for 2 years now. 2 years of trapping beaver, 2 years of learning the country, 2 years of trying every single day not to die. So far you've managed, but this morning feels different. The annual rendezvous ended 3 weeks ago. That was the one time each year when trappers from across the Rockies gathered together. A brief return to noise and voices and laughter. A chance to trade furs for supplies, to drink too much, to gamble, to remember what it felt like to be around other human beings. This year's rendezvous was smaller. Everyone noticed. Fewer supply wagons. Fewer traders willing to make the journey, fewer trappers coming back for another season. The beaver are getting scarce now, stream by stream, valley by valley, trapped out after decades of relentless hunting, and word drifting west from back east says fashion is changing, silk hats are becoming popular, beaver felt is quietly slipping out of style. You don't care much about fashion, what you care about is the $300 worth of pelts you need to collect before next summer's rendezvous. You care about surviving long enough to spend that money. But standing by the river this morning, watching the water move past your boots, your thoughts keep drifting back to that smell. It's the air, something heavy in it, something that wasn't there yesterday. The old-timers have a word for it. They say it's a weight, a heaviness that settles in your chest when you breathe in deep. It smells like snow waiting to fall, like winter sliding down from the high country, weeks earlier than it should. You're camped with Jim Bridges' brigade, about 30 men in all, trappers and camp keepers, moving together for safety and company. They're preparing to head north toward the Yellowstone River for the fall hunt. Bridger himself is crouched by the fire, maybe 50 feet away, talking quietly with a crow scout who rode into camp at dawn. You can't hear their words, but you can see Bridger's face. Jim Bridger doesn't worry easily. He survived a grizzly attack once. An arrowhead lodged in his back for 3 years before it finally worked its way out. He's been in these mountains since he was 17, longer than you've been alive. He knows this country the way a man knows his own hands, and right now he looks concerned. You finish your coffee. It's weak. Rations were cut at the rendezvous this year. Supplies were short. Everything feels short lately. The beaver, the supplies, the easy money, the future. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today, there are traps to set and work to be done. You dump the last of the coffee onto the fire. The coals hiss and steam. You turn toward your horse. That's when Bridger calls your name. Morgan, come here a minute. You walk over. The Crow Scout watches you approach, his face calm, his eyes giving nothing away. You'll learn later that his name is Two Horses. He's lived in these mountains for 40 winters. He knows things that would take you another lifetime to understand. Bridger doesn't waste time. The crows say this winter's going to be bad, he says. Real bad. They're reading the signs. Beaver pelts coming in thick. Elk moving south early. Squirrels hoarding more than usual. You've heard this before. Every year someone predicts a hard winter. Sometimes they're right. Most years you survive anyway. How bad, you ask? Bridger looks at Two Horses. The scout says nothing. His silence carries more weight than words. Bad enough, Bridger explains, that the Crow are moving their entire village down to the lowlands soon. Maybe tomorrow. That's unusual. The Crow usually winter in the Yellowstone country. Good hunting, sheltered valleys, but they're leaving. So what do? You ask. Bridger stands. He stretches his back and winces, an old injury reminding him it never truly healed. We trap, he says. That's what we do. Then he adds more quietly that this time they trap smart. Find good winter ground early, build the cabin solid, stock up on meat while they can, and pray to whatever God you believe in that the Crow are wrong. Then he walks away. The conversation is over. You stand there for a moment, looking toward the mountains. They look the same as they always do. Beautiful, deadly, completely indifferent to whether you live or die. You've survived 2 winters already. The first nearly killed you. Frostbite took 2 toes from your left foot. You still limp a little when the cold sets in. The second winter was easier. You knew what to expect. You knew how to prepare. But something about this morning, the weight in the air, the worry on Bridger's face, the silence of the Crow Scout, makes you wonder if everything you learned might not be enough. You push the thought aside. There's work to do. The brigade breaks camp an hour later. 30 men, 60 horses, 200 steel traps, enough powder and lead to fight a small war, and enough food to last maybe 6 weeks if everyone is careful. After that, you hunt or you starve. That's the bargain you made when you came west. No one forced you. You wanted this life, the freedom, the space, the chance to make a fortune in a land where fortune still seemed possible. Now all that stands between you and that fortune is survival. The ride north takes 3 weeks. You follow rivers and valleys, ancient paths used by native tribes for generations. Routes the mountain men carry in their heads because most of them can't read or write. Bridger could draw you a map of every stream and peak from here to the Pacific. Accurate down to the mile, he carries the whole country in his mind. You carry your rifle across your saddle. Your pistol sits heavy in your belt. Your knife hangs at your hip. In your possibles bag is everything else you own. Flint and steel, spare bullets, needle and thread, and a small Bible your mother gave you when you left home. The pages are soft from handling, the words as familiar as your own breathing. You don't know it yet, but you'll need that Bible before spring. As you ride north, the country slowly changes. Valleys narrow, mountains grow higher, their peaks already dusted with early snow. The air thins, grows colder, sharper in your lungs. By October, You can see your breath even at midday. The brigade traps as it goes, setting lines along the streams, checking them at dawn, skinning beaver, scraping pelts, packing them carefully for transport. It's cold work, hard work, the kind that leaves your hands cracked and bleeding by nightfall. But it's honest work, and it pays. A prime beaver pelt brings $4, maybe 5, if the buyer's in a good mood. A good trapper can take 60 pelts in a season. That's real money. Enough to live on for a year back east. Enough to buy land, start a farm, settle down, forget you ever froze your toes off in the Rockies. Most trappers never do. They spend their money at the rendezvous, on whiskey, on gambling, on women, on supplies for just one more season. The mountains get into your blood. The freedom becomes a kind of prison. You tell yourself you'll quit next year. You never do. But that's a problem for survivors. Right now, in October of 1836, you're just trying to make it through one more winter. The brigade reaches the Yellowstone country in early November, and for a moment, it almost feels like the Crow were wrong. The river cuts through a wide valley that seems made for wintering. Sheltered ground, good grass, timber close by, a place that looks at first glance like it might let you live. For now, sheltered from the worst of the winds, the valley offers what every trapper looks for when winter is closing in. There is good timber nearby, straight trees that can be cut and shaped into walls. Streams run through the low ground, still full of beaver for now, and scattered through the valley are the geothermal springs. Strange steaming pools where hot water bubbles up from deep underground, sending ghostly clouds into the cold air. On the coldest nights, if a man camps close enough, that warmth can mean the difference between shivering through the dark and surviving until morning. This is where Bridger's brigade will spend the winter. This is where you'll try to survive. The cabins go up quickly. You've done this before. Everyone here has. There's no ceremony to it, no wasted motion. First you find a spot close to timber, but far enough from the river to avoid flooding when the ice shifts. Logs are cut about 8 inches thick. The ends are notched carefully so they lock together at the corners, one log on top of another, stacked steadily upward. The gaps are packed tight with mud and moss, pressed in by hand, sealing out the wind as best you can. The roof is laid with poles, then bark, then dirt shoveled on top for insulation. If you're lucky enough to find flat stones, you build a fireplace against one wall. If not, you dig a fire pit in the center and let the smoke find its own way out. Your cabin is small, 10 feet by 12, barely enough room for 3 men. You share it with Jacob Hawkins and William Cole. Jacob has been in the mountains 5 years now, long enough to move with quiet confidence, long enough to know when not to speak. William is a greenhorn, his first season, still learning the habits of the land, still learning which end of the trap goes into the water. You fall. Somewhere between them. Not quite a veteran, not quite a fool. For 2 weeks straight, you work, cutting logs, hauling them through the snow, chinking gaps, testing the fireplace again and again until the smoke finally draws upward instead of filling the cabin. When you can spare the time, you hunt. Meat is dried slowly over low fires, then packed away in rawhide containers, stacked carefully for the lean months ahead. Firewood is cut and piled high as much as you can manage. By mid-November, the cabin is finished. It isn't much to look at. Squat, dark, rough, as unpolished as the men who built it. But it's solid. It keeps out the wind. It holds the heat. And for now, that's enough. It will be your home until spring, if spring ever comes. That night, you eat well. Elk steaks roasted over the fire, coffee, the last of the good supply, a small amount of sugar that William's been hoarding since the rendezvous. You tell stories, you laugh, you pretend, for a few hours, that the winter ahead will be like the winters before. None of you really believe it. You've all seen the signs. Beaver pelts coming in thicker than anyone remembers. Elk moving south weeks earlier than usual. Squirrels frantic with hoarding. Their caches larger than they should be. The Shoshone who passed through recently, heading down to the plains, looking back at the mountains with expressions you couldn't quite read. The Crow were right. The signs are there. You just have to know how to see them. That night, after Jacob and William fall asleep, you lie awake on your bed of pine boughs, your buffalo robe pulled tight around you. The log ceiling hangs 6 feet above your face. The fire has burned down to a dull bed of coals. The darkness is complete. Outside, the wind presses against the walls, testing them, searching for weakness. You think about home, a farm in Missouri, green fields in summer, your mother's cooking, your father's voice, rough, steady, kind, telling stories about the frontier long before you ever thought you'd see it yourself. You left all of that behind. Came west at 21 with a horse, a rifle, and a head full of ideas about freedom and opportunity. You found work with the fur companies, learned how to trap, how to shoot, how to survive. You made friends with men who would die for you and men who would rob you blind without a second thought. You saw things that will stay with you forever. You killed 2 men, both in self-defense, both necessary, both regrettable, and here you are now, 23 years old, lying in a log cabin at the edge of the world, waiting for a winter that might kill you. You close your eyes. You try to sleep. Outside, the first snowflakes begin to fall. It starts softly, just a whisper of white drifting down through the darkness. You wake to a strange silence, the kind only snow can bring. When you crack the door open, there's barely an inch on the ground. Nothing serious, nothing to worry about. By noon, there are 6 inches. By evening, a foot. By the next morning, 2 feet, and still falling. This isn't the light, manageable snow of a normal Rocky Mountain autumn. This snow is heavy, wet, dense. It bends pine trees double under its weight. It piles up faster than it can melt. It turns the world white and keeps it that way. For 3 days it doesn't stop. You take turns shoveling the door clear, cutting paths to the woodpile, checking the chimney to make sure smoke can still escape. The cabin groans under the weight on the roof. At night, you hear the timbers shift and settle, complaining softly in the cold. On the 4th day, the storm breaks. The sun comes out, blinding and sharp. You step outside into a world transformed. The valley is buried. Trees sag beneath heavy loads of snow. The river is hidden now, its voice muffled, its banks raised by endless drifts. And the temperature drops. You feel it deep in your bones. A cold that goes beyond discomfort. A cold that reminds you that humans were never meant for this. That you're a warm-blooded animal wrapped in wool and leather, trying to survive in a land that does not care whether you live or die. Jacob steps out beside you. He stands quietly, breath steaming in the air. This is just the beginning, he says. He's right. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 more storms roll through the valley, each worse than the last, each adding another layer to the prison forming around you. By early December, the snow in the valley is waist deep. In the high country, it's over a man's head. The river freezes solid. You can walk across it now if you're careful, if you test each step. The ice is thick enough to hold a horse, thick enough to trap a man who falls through a weak spot and can't climb out. The game disappears. The elk have moved south. The deer vanish into thick timber. Even the rabbits seem to disappear beneath the drifts. And then there are the wolves. You hear them before you see them. Howls rising from beyond the firelight. One voice, then another, until it sounds like the mountains themselves are singing. It's beautiful, and it's terrifying. It's the sound of hunger, of patience, of something watching and waiting. One morning, you wake to tracks outside the cabin door. Wolf tracks, coming right up to the threshold, stopping there, as if something stood in the night, sniffing at the crack beneath the door, testing your defenses. No one goes out alone anymore. Life becomes routine. Wake at dawn, build the fire, melt snow for water, eat sparingly, venture out in groups to check traps, gather wood, search for anything that moves. Always come back before dark. Always. The days are short now. The sun barely clears the mountains, casting long shadows across the snow before slipping away again. Most of your life is spent in darkness, sitting by the fire, mending gear, telling stories to pass the hours. You tell Jacob about your mother's apple pie. He tells you about a girl in St. Louis, the one who wouldn't wait. William talks about his plans, the money he'll make, the land he'll buy, the life he'll build when this is over. None of you talk about the cold, or the hunger starting to gnaw, or the fear that creeps in when the fire burns low and the wind howls outside. You're 3 men in a log box buried in snow, surrounded by wolves watching your food supply shrink, and winter has barely begun. By mid-December things turn serious. Half your dried meat is gone. Hunting is nearly impossible. Every step outside is a fight. Against thigh-deep snow, against cold that numbs your hands in minutes, against a landscape that looks the same in every direction. Then you lose a man from the brigade. His name was Charles, a quiet trapper from Kentucky. He went out one morning to check his traps and didn't come back. They find him 3 days later, half a mile from camp. He broke through the ice crossing a stream. He pulled himself out, made it maybe 100 yards before the cold took him. He's frozen solid when they find him, curled at the base of a tree, like he just laid down to rest. They couldn't bury him. The ground was frozen too hard, locked solid beneath layers of ice and snow. No shovel would bite into it. No amount of effort would change that. So they did what they could. They carried his body a short distance from camp, found a place where the rocks broke through the snow and piled stones over him, not as a marker, just as a covering. Everyone understood what would happen next. The wolves would find him eventually. Nobody said it out loud. That night, you lie awake again, listening to the wind slide across the valley, counting the days until spring, though you don't know how many there are, counting the meals left in your supplies, counting the men in the brigade, and quietly wondering which ones won't be there when the snow finally melts. Outside, the snow keeps falling, soft at first, then heavier, and somewhere in the darkness, the wolves are singing. Christmas comes and goes, without ceremony. There's nothing to celebrate with, no decorations, no special meal. The snow hasn't really stopped at all. A day here, 2 days there. Then another storm rolls in from the west and buries everything again. By late December, you stop measuring it in feet. It's simply everywhere. Above your head in some places, chest deep in others. Even the sheltered spots near the cabin disappear under drifts. Your food supply is running low, very low. The dried elk meat that seemed like abundance back in November is now maybe 2 weeks' worth, stretched thin between 3 hungry men. Jacob has taken to counting the pieces each morning. He rations them carefully, handing them out like coins, watching your eyes to make sure you don't take more than your share. You don't blame him. You find yourself doing the same thing. The cold is something else entirely. You thought you knew cold. 2 winters in the mountains taught you about frostbite, about fingers that won't bend, about breath freezing in your beard until it becomes a mask of ice. But this is different. This cold finds every weakness, every gap in your clothing, every crack in the cabin walls, every place you fail to prepare. It makes the logs pop and snap in the night like distant gunfire. It turns a bucket of water into solid ice within an hour of bringing it inside. One morning, you wake to find the fire has burned down to glowing coals. The cabin temperature has dropped so low that your buffalo robe is stiff, frozen with the moisture from your own breath. You can't feel your feet. You spend 20 minutes crouched by the rebuilt fire, rubbing them slowly, praying you haven't lost more toes. You haven't, not yet. But it's close. Too close. That afternoon, Bridger calls the brigade together. It takes nearly an hour just to assemble everyone. Men trudge through the drifts from their scattered cabins, breath steaming, faces wrapped in scarves and furs until only their eyes show. You try to count heads as they gather. It's difficult with everyone bundled like that, but you can see the gaps. Charles is gone. 2 others went out hunting a week ago and never returned. Another man, a greenhorn whose name you never learned, froze in his sleep when his fire went out. His cabin mates were too exhausted to notice in time. The brigade is shrinking. Bridger looks older than he did in September. The winter is wearing on everyone, but it seems to sit heavier on him. He's responsible for all of you. Every death settles on his shoulders. We need to talk about the cabins, he says. No one speaks. Everyone already knows. The cabins aren't working. They're not warm enough. The walls are too thin. The gaps too many. The cold too relentless. You're burning through firewood twice as fast as planned, and the wood piles are shrinking faster than they can be replaced. Every trip out to gather more is a gamble with your life. The Crow showed me something years back, Bridger continues, and I've seen the Inuit do it up north. They bury themselves in snow. A few men shift uneasily. Sounds crazy, Bridger admits. But snow holds air. Air holds heat. A buried cabin stays warmer than one sitting in the wind. Jacob speaks up from beside you. You want us to bury our cabin in snow? I want you to let the snow bury it, Bridger says. Then pack more on top. Cover everything except the door and the chimney. Turn your cabin into a snow cave with log walls inside. Silence settles over the group. Men think it through. Some look doubtful. Others look desperate enough to try anything. Won't the roof collapse? Someone asks. Not if you built it right, Bridger replies. The poles can handle the weight. Just keep the chimney clear. And if it blocks... His face hardens. Then you clear it, or you choke on smoke, or you freeze. Those are your choices. The meeting breaks up quietly. Men trudge back to their cabins, talking in low voices, weighing the risk against the alternative. You walk back with Jacob and William. None of you speak until the door is shut and the fire crackles weakly in the hearth. What do you think? William asks. He's the youngest, still looking to you and Jacob for guidance. Jacob stares into the fire. I think we freeze to death if we don't try something. That's answer enough. You start the next morning. The work is brutal, made worse by the fact that you can barely feel your hands most of the time. But the idea itself is simple. Stop shoveling the snow away. Let it pile up against the walls. Pack it down. Add more. Keep adding until the cabin is buried up to the roof line. You begin with the north wall, where the wind hits hardest, where the cold always seems to seep through, no matter how much moss you've stuffed into the cracks. You take the snow that's already drifted there and pack it tight against the logs. Then you shovel more on top, pack it again and again. By evening, the north wall is covered by a layer of snow 3 feet thick. You can't see the logs anymore, just a smooth white slope rising past the edge of the roof. You go inside, close the door, build up the fire, and wait. Within an hour you feel it. The difference is subtle but real. The wall isn't bleeding cold anymore. The heat stays where it belongs, inside the cabin. The temperature rises just enough that you can take off your outer coat, just enough that the water bucket doesn't freeze solid overnight. It's working, William says, wonder creeping into his voice. He's sitting closer to the fire than he has in weeks. Jacob nods. He's already planning the next day. Over the following week, you bury the entire cabin. South wall, east wall, west wall. The roof is the hardest part. You climb up carefully, shoveling snow onto the bark and dirt, building it layer by layer. You move slowly. One wrong step, and you punch through into the cabin below. One miscalculation, and you bury yourself and your partners alive. But you take your time. Handful by handful. When you're finished, the cabin has vanished. From a distance, there's nothing to see but a mound of snow, maybe 10 feet high, with a thin ribbon of smoke rising from a hole near the top. A man could ride past it and never know anyone was inside. The whole camp looks like that now. A dozen white mounds scattered through the valley, a dozen thin columns of smoke, small signs of life in a landscape determined to erase them. Inside, the change is remarkable. The buried cabin holds heat like nothing you've ever known. A fire that once barely kept you alive now makes the space almost comfortable. You can strip down to your shirt without shivering. You can sleep without pulling your buffalo robe over your head. For a few hours at a time, you can almost forget that the cold outside is strong enough to kill you in minutes. The reason makes sense, even if you don't have the words for it. Snow is full of tiny pockets of air, millions of them, and air is one of the best insulators there is. A thick layer of packed snow works nearly as well as a proper wall, maybe better. The Inuit learned this centuries ago. They survived winters that would kill any unprepared man in a week. The Crow knew it too. They'd been burying their lodges in snow since long before your grandfather was born. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Sometimes the people who have lived on the land the longest understand things no school back east could ever teach. The difference in temperature is undeniable. You can measure it in a rough way. Outside, the cold is sharp enough that spit freezes before it reaches the ground. It turns solid in mid-air and falls like a pebble into the snow. Inside the buried cabin, with a small fire burning steadily, it's warmer. Not warm exactly, but warmer. Maybe 20 degrees warmer, 30 on a good day. Still cold by any normal measure. Still cold enough that you keep your coat within arm's reach. But survivable, bearable, the difference between slowly dying and holding on. Burying the cabin saves your lives. But it brings problems no one warned you about. The first problem is the smoke. Before, when the cabin sat open to the air, smoke had many ways to escape, mostly up the chimney, but also through the cracks in the walls, the gaps around the door, the dozens of tiny openings you cursed every time the wind cut through them. Those same gaps that stole your heat also kept you breathing. Now the cabin is sealed tight under layers of packed snow. The smoke has only one way out, the chimney, and the chimney blocks constantly. Snow drifts over the opening, ice forms around the edges. One night, you wake choking, gasping. The air is thick and grey, burning your throat and lungs. You stumble for the door in complete darkness, unable to see through the haze filling the cabin. You burst outside into the freezing night, coughing hard, spitting into the snow, lungs screaming from the smoke you breathed in your sleep. Jacob and William are right behind you. William drops to his knees in the snow and vomits. Jacob's eyes stream tears, his breath ragged. None of you speak for a long moment. You just stand there, half-dressed in killing cold, trying to clear your lungs. The chimney, Jacob finally manages, has to be blocked. It is. A full foot of snow has drifted over the hole during the night. You climb onto the roof, your bare feet going numb in seconds, and clear it with your hands. Smoke begins to rise again, thin and steady. You go back inside, but none of you return to sleep. You sit by the fire, watching the smoke, waiting for dawn. From then on, you keep a long pole inside the cabin. Every few hours, someone goes outside and pokes at the chimney opening, knocking loose any ice or snow that's built up. At night, you take shifts. One man sleeps while the others watch the fire and the smoke. If it starts backing up, you clear the blockage before it can fill the cabin. It works, mostly, but there's another danger, one you don't understand. Till it's too late. A man named Robert Hayes winters on the other side of the valley. 4 men share his cabin, all experienced trappers, all veterans of hard winters. They bury their cabin the same way you do. They watch their chimney. They take the same precautions, but one night something goes wrong. Maybe the chimney blocks and no one notices. Maybe the fire burns hotter than usual and uses up the good air too fast. Maybe it's something else entirely. Something invisible, something without smell, something that slips into the cabin while they sleep. When the other trappers check on them 3 days later, all 4 men are dead. You're there when they find them. You volunteered to go because Robert Hayes was a decent man. He once shared his tobacco with you at rendezvous. You owed him that much. The walk takes 2 hours. Snow reaches your chest in places. By the time you reach the buried cabin, you're exhausted, sweating under your furs despite the cold. The door is frozen shut. It takes 3 men to force it open. Inside, the air is dead. The fire has long since gone out. Frost coats everything. The walls, the floor, the beds. A thin white layer settles over the 4 bodies lying where they slept. No wounds, no signs of struggle, no evidence that anything went wrong at all. Robert lies on his back. His buffalo robe is pulled neatly up to his chin. His face is calm, peaceful, like he simply went to sleep and stayed there. But his skin is wrong. Grey, waxy. When you touch his shoulder, he's frozen solid, dead for days. The others are the same. Bridger says it's the smoke, not the kind you see and smell. Something else. Something that comes from fires burning in closed spaces without enough fresh air. Something that steals your breath while you sleep and never gives it back. The fire eats the good air, he says, replaces it with something bad, something that puts you to sleep and doesn't let you wake up. You don't understand the science. Nobody out here does. Men back east might have a name for it. Might understand what happens when a fire consumes all the breathable air in a sealed room. Out here, all you know is that 4 good men went to sleep and never woke up. And it could just as easily have been you. That thought stays with you as you help carry the bodies outside, as you pile rocks over them because the ground is too frozen to dig, as you walk back to your own buried cabin in the gathering dusk, watching the smoke rise from the chimney hole, wondering if tonight will be the night your fire betrays you too. You don't understand the science, but you understand the lesson. That night, you crack the door open just an inch, just enough to let fresh air slip inside around the buffalo robe you hang as a barrier. Cold air comes with it. The temperature drops. But you can breathe. Breathing matters more than comfort. From then on, you never seal the cabin completely. You always leave a gap. You always let a little of the killing cold inside, because the alternative is worse. The other problem with burying the cabin is the darkness. Before, some light crept through the cracks. Not much. The winter sun barely clears the mountains and it sets by mid-afternoon anyway. But there was something, a dim grey glow during the day. Now, buried under feet of packed snow, no light gets in at all. Day and night become the same, 24 hours of unbroken darkness, broken only by the fire's glow. And you can't keep the fire burning all the time. Not if you want the wood to last. Not if you want to see spring. So you spend hours in darkness, sitting, waiting, listening to the wind outside, listening to each other breathe, listening to your own thoughts. That might be the hardest part. You try to fill the time. You mend gear by touch, fingers finding holes and tears without needing to see them. You tell stories, the same stories over and over, until every word is familiar. You play cards, though half the deck is gone and no one remembers the rules to anything complicated. Mostly you sit and try not to count the days until spring. The darkness does something to a man. It stretches time, makes hours feel like days, makes the walls feel closer than they are, makes the world outside feel unreal, like something imagined. William starts talking to himself. Nothing wild, just quiet murmuring when he thinks no one hears, conversations with people who aren't there. His mother, a sweetheart back in Ohio, a brother who died of fever 3 years ago. You pretend not to notice. Jacob does too. It's not hurting anyone. And maybe it helps William hold on to something the darkness is trying to take away. You think about your own family, your mother's face, your father's voice, the farm in Missouri, green, warm, impossibly far away. You wonder if they think about you, if they know where you are, if they could even imagine this place. They can't. This frozen prison is beyond anything they've known, beyond anything you imagined when you were a boy dreaming of adventure. You wanted to see the wilderness. Here it is. One evening, when the fire burns low and the darkness feels thick enough to touch, Jacob speaks. "We're not going to make it." You don't answer. Neither does William. "The food's almost gone," Jacob continues. "We haven't caught anything in weeks. The snow isn't letting up. and spring is still months away. We'll figure something out, you say, but your voice sounds hollow, even to you. Will we? Jacob says quietly. The fire crackles. Sparks drift upward toward the smoke hole and vanish into the darkness above. Because right now, the way I see it, we've got maybe 2 weeks of food left. After that, we either find game, or we eat the horses, or we starve. Those are the options. No one speaks. The truth sits there with you, heavy and unmoving. We could try the lower valleys, William finally says. The game went down there when the snow got deep. Maybe, Jacob replies, or maybe we spend 3 days fighting through chest-deep snow with no guarantee of finding anything. We'd die before we got halfway. Silence again. So what do we do? William asks. His voice is small now. Afraid. Jacob doesn't answer. He doesn't have one. Neither do you. You sit there in the dark, in the buried cabin that's keeping you alive and slowly driving you mad. You listen to the wind howl outside. You count heartbeats until morning. You wonder if morning will bring anything different. You wonder if it even matters anymore. The cold, the dark, the hunger, the fear. This is what survival looks like. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. Then another. Then a whole chorus rises together, echoing off the frozen mountains. They're out there, waiting, hungry, just like you. The firewood runs out faster than you expected. You stocked what seemed like enough for an entire winter. Cords of wood stacked against the cabin wall, split and dried, ready to burn. But that was before you understood what this winter would demand. Before the cold forced you to keep the fire going day and night just to stay alive. Before the buried cabin trapped heat so completely that every log burned hotter and faster. By early January, the woodpile is half gone. By mid-January, you're down to maybe 3 weeks' worth. And every trip to gather more is a fight for your life. The nearest stand of dead timber is only a quarter-mile away. In normal times, that's a 10-minute walk. Now, with snow up to your chest and cold that freezes exposed skin in minutes, it's an hour-long ordeal. You have to break trail through the drifts, rest every 100 feet, gasp for air, start again. By the time you reach the trees, you're soaked in sweat. By the time you chop enough wood to carry back, the sweat has frozen inside your clothes. Every step home feels heavier than the last. One morning, Jacob returns from a wood trip shaking so badly he can barely stand. His lips are blue. His fingers won't close. It takes 2 hours. By the fire before the trembling stops. Can't keep doing this, he says once he can finally speak. It's going to kill us faster than the cold. He's right. The trips burn more energy than the wood is worth. You need another way. That's when you remember the fat. You've been saving it. Buffalo fat, mostly. Rendered down from the animals you killed in the fall. A few pounds of elk fat too, maybe 5 pounds total, packed in a leather pouch and tucked into the coldest corner of the cabin. You'd been thinking of it as emergency food, last resort stuff, but fat burns. Everyone knows that. Drop bacon grease into a fire and watch it flare. Grease catches fast. Flames leap. Light and heat bloom suddenly. So why not burn the fat on purpose? You don't have bacon, but you do have strips of rendered buffalo fat, hard as candle wax in the cold. You take one of the shallow stone dishes you use for mixing things. Set it near the fire until it warms. Lay a strip of fat inside. Touch the end with a burning stick. It catches slowly, then faster. The fat melts and burns, giving off a weak, flickering light and a thick plume of greasy smoke that crawls upward toward the chimney hole. It works, sort of. The light is awful. Nothing like a proper candle, nothing steady. Just an orange, dying glow, barely enough to see your own hands. But in the absolute darkness of the buried cabin, even that matters. You can see each other's faces now, can tell who's awake and who's sleeping, can find the water bucket without knocking it over. Small mercies, that's what survival becomes. A collection of small mercies that add up to another day alive. The smoke, though, is something else entirely. It's thick, greasy, it coats everything it touches, the walls, your clothes, your skin, your lungs. Within a day, the cabin walls are streaked with dark residue. Within a week, you can drag a finger across any surface and come away blackened. Your face is smeared with soot. Your hands are permanently stained. When you blow your nose, what comes out is grey, and the smell. Burning fat has a particular odour. Heavy, rich, slightly rancid, like meat just starting to turn. Mix that with wood smoke. Add the sour stench of 3 unwashed men living in a 10 by 12 space for weeks. Add the musky animal reek of beaver pelts and deer hides drying in the corner. Trap it all inside a cabin with barely any ventilation. The air becomes something you have to push through. Thick, choking, your eyes water constantly, your throat stays raw. You cough in your sleep, hacking up black phlegm you'd be alarmed by if you had the energy left to care. One morning, Jacob stares at his hands, black with soot. "You know what this reminds me of?" he says. "What?" "Chimney sweeps back in St. Louis. Those kids who climb inside chimneys to clean them. They always look like this. Those kids get paid, you say. They also get lung disease and die young." He wipes his hands on his pants. "It does nothing. So I guess we have that in common. That's not funny." "No," he agrees, "it really isn't. But you both laugh anyway. What else can you do?" Back east, where people live normal lives, they'd call this place unfit for human habitation. They'd open windows, demand fresh air, walk away from the smoke and filth. You don't have that option. This is home now, this pit of smoke and grease and unwashed bodies. This is what staying alive looks like. But it's warm. The fat adds heat as well as light. And warmth is the only currency that matters anymore. You fall into a routine. Wake up, build the fire, light the fat lamp, eat whatever meager ration Jacob allows that day, sit in the dim, greasy glow. Wait, check the chimney, feed the fire, trim the fat when the flame gutters, wait some more. The days blur together. Monday feels like Thursday, feels like Saturday, feels like nothing at all. The only markers of time are the meals growing smaller and the fat supply shrinking with everything else. You start rationing the light too. No point burning fat while you sleep. So you snuff the lamp at night and let the darkness take everything. You learn the cabin by memory. 3 steps from your bed to the fire pit, 2 from the fire to the water bucket, 4 to the door. You could do it blindfolded. You almost are. William handles the darkness worse than you or Jacob. He was never meant for this life. Young, soft, came west looking for adventure and found something else entirely. At night you hear him muttering in his sleep. Names, fragments of conversations. Sometimes he whimpers softly, like a child who doesn't know where he is anymore. You lie there in the dark, listening, wondering how much longer any of you can hold on. 300 pounds of meat. The number sits in your head, heavy and unwelcome. You don't want it there, but it keeps returning. Like a bad tooth, your tongue won't leave alone. 300 pounds is a lot, more than enough. Enough to carry you through February. Maybe March if you're careful. Enough to see grass again. Enough to live. You hate yourself a little for thinking it. You turn onto your side, pulling the buffalo robe tighter around your shoulders, though it doesn't help much. The cold still finds you. It always does. The fire has burned down to coals, just enough to keep the cabin from freezing solid. The fat lamp is dark. Total darkness presses in from every direction. William sobs once, quietly, then stills. You can hear him trying to control his breathing, forcing it slow so it doesn't turn into something worse. Jacob lies rigid on the other side of the cabin. Awake, you're sure of it. None of you sleep much anymore. The days that follow are thinner than the ones before. Meals shrink again. Jacob breaks the pemmican cakes into smaller and smaller pieces, measuring with his fingers, his eyes sharp, his jaw clenched. No one complains. There's nothing to complain about. Hunger has become a background noise, a constant presence like the wind outside. You don't remember what it feels like to be full. You're not sure you remember what full even means. Your body changes. Your belt needs another hole. Your clothes hang looser. Your face in the dim glow of the fat lamp looks unfamiliar. Cheeks hollowed, eyes too large, skin stretched tight over bone. You move slower now. Everything takes more effort. Even standing makes you dizzy sometimes. The cold feels sharper too, like your body doesn't have enough left to fight it properly. One morning, William doesn't get up right away. He just lies there, staring into nothing. "You sick?" Jacob asks. William shakes his head. "Just tired." You help him to his feet anyway. He sways, steadies himself against the wall. His hands shake when he lifts his ration to his mouth. Outside, one of the horses collapses. You hear it before you see it. A dull thump, a startled whinny, the sound of hooves scrambling uselessly in the snow. You pull on your boots and furs and step out into the killing cold. The sky is flat and white. The world feels dead. The horse lies on its side near the shelter, legs tangled awkwardly beneath it. Steam rises from its nostrils. Its ribs show clearly now, skin stretched tight, flanks sunken. It tries to stand and fails. You just watch for a long moment. Jacob joins you. William stays inside. "She won't make it," Jacob says quietly. You nod. You knew that before he said it. She's burning more energy standing than she's getting from what she eats. Another attempt, another failure. The horse lies still, sides heaving. You don't say it out loud, but both of you are thinking the same thing. If she dies on her own, freezes stiff in the night, that's different. That's not a choice. That's circumstance. But waiting has its own risks. Meat spoils, wolves come. You've heard them closer lately. You go back inside without saying anything. That evening, Jacob doesn't count the food, he just hands it out. The pieces are so small they barely feel real. You chew slowly, trying to trick your body into thinking it's getting more than it is. "We can't wait much longer," Jacob says finally. William doesn't look up. "I already said I'm not eating my horse. You might not have a choice." "There's always a choice." Jacob sighs. "That's easy to say when you're not the one doing the math." Silence settles again. Thick, heavy. You break it. "If one dies on its own..." William looks up sharply. "If one dies, you continue. We don't waste it." He swallows. His eyes shine in the dim light, but he nods. Once. Barely. That night the wind howls harder than usual. The buried cabin creaks softly as the snow shifts and settles. You wake several times, heart pounding, listening for the chimney, for the fire, for anything wrong. At some point near dawn, you hear a sound outside. Not the wind. A horse. You sit up. So do Jacob and William. For a moment none of you move. Then Jacob pulls on his boots. "I'll check," he says. You follow him out. The horse by the shelter is still. Completely still. Snow has drifted halfway over its body. Frost rims its eyes. Jacob kneels, presses a hand to its neck, then pulls back slowly. It's gone. No one says anything. The relief hits first, sharp, immediate. Then the shame follows close behind. You feel it in your chest, heavy and sickening. Relief that you won't starve today. Relief that the decision was taken out of your hands. William stands a few steps back, staring. His lips tremble, but he doesn't cry. Not yet. You work because stopping would mean thinking. The knife is stiff with cold. Your fingers are clumsy, numb. Steam rises as you open the carcass. A shocking, almost obscene warmth spilling into the frozen air. The smell of blood is sharp and metallic, cutting through everything else. William turns away at first, then he comes back. He has to. You butcher carefully, methodically, like you've done before with elk and deer. This is just bigger, heavier, harder. The meat freezes as fast as you cut it. You stack it in the snow, red against white. Wolves howl in the distance. They know. By the time you're done, you're exhausted beyond words. But there it is, meat, real food, more than you've seen in weeks. That night, you eat better than you have since November. Not much, you're still careful, still afraid to eat too much too fast. But the hunger eases, just a little, enough that your head feels clearer, enough that the ache in your belly loosens its grip. William doesn't speak while he eats, he just stares at his hands. "I'm sorry," you say quietly. He nods. "Me too." Outside, the snow keeps falling. Spring is still impossibly far away. But for the first time in weeks, you're not counting meals. You're counting days again. You hate yourself for thinking it, but the thought comes anyway, quiet and persistent, settling somewhere deep in your mind where you can't quite reach it to push it away. The next morning, one of the horses is dead. You find it when you go out to feed them, the routine already meaningless now that there's barely anything left to give. The animal lies on its side in the snow, legs stiff and locked, eyes open and glassy, rimmed with frost. Snow has drifted halfway up its flank. It must have died sometime in the night, too weak, too cold, too tired to keep standing. The cold took it quietly, the way it takes most things out here. It's William's horse, the one his father gave him before he left home. When you tell him, he doesn't speak. He just looks at you for a long moment, really looks at you, as if searching for something that isn't there anymore. Then he turns away and faces the wall of the cabin, pulling his buffalo robe up around his shoulders like a barrier between himself and the world. Jacob looks at you. You look at Jacob. Nothing needs to be said. You both know what happens next. The butchering takes most of the day. The meat is frozen solid, which makes the work slow and brutal. Every cut is a fight. Your knives scrape and catch against frozen flesh, your hands going numb within minutes. You work in shifts. One man hacking at the carcass while the others stand by the fire, rubbing their fingers back to life before trading places again. By evening, you have maybe 200 pounds of meat packed into the snow outside the cabin. Red blocks wrapped in hide and cloth, stacked carefully where they'll stay frozen. Enough to last another month, maybe more if you're careful. William won't eat it the first night. He sits in his corner, wrapped tight in his robe, eyes empty, staring at nothing while Jacob offers him strips of roasted horse meat. He shakes his head once. That's all. No one argues. By the second night, he eats. He doesn't have a choice. None of you do. The meat tastes different from elk or deer or buffalo. Sweeter somehow. Richer. There's more fat than you expect. Thick layers of it that you render down and add to your supply for the lamps. The bones go into a pot of melted snow and boil for hours, producing a thin, greasy broth that warms your stomach and gives you something to sip during the long, endless hours of darkness. You don't waste anything. You can't afford to. A week later, another horse dies. Same thing. It lies down in the night and doesn't get up again. No sound, no struggle, just gone. You butcher that one too. You add it to the stockpile and try not to think about what it means that there are only 2 horses left now. 2 horses for 3 men. If spring comes and you have to leave the mountains, someone is walking. But spring feels unreal, a story from another life. You have closer problems. The smoke from the fat lamp grows thicker. The cabin walls are black now, coated in soot and grease. The air tastes like ash and rancid fat, heavy enough that it feels like something you have to swallow rather than breathe. And outside, in the frozen darkness, the wolves are closer. They know about the horses. They can smell the blood from the butchering, even days later. Their howls carry through the valley at night, rising and falling, hungry and patient. You've started to recognize individual voices in the pack. The deep, steady howl of the big male, the higher nervous yips of the younger ones, the eerie, almost human wail of the female who always starts the chorus. 6 voices, maybe 7. During the day when you go out for wood or check on the remaining horses, you see their tracks, circling the cabin, looping past the shelter, coming within 20 feet of your door before turning away, testing, learning. Wolves are smart. smarter than most people think. They've learned that men with rifles are dangerous up close, so they wait. You clean your rifle again. Make sure there's powder in the pan, a ball in the barrel, 8 shots left, maybe 9. Not enough to fight a pack, but enough to make them pay. Inside, the fire crackles weakly, the fat lamp flickers, darkness presses in from every direction, and in your belly, beneath the thin warmth of horse meat broth, the hunger is still there, always there, gnawing, patient, a reminder of how close you are to the edge. You think about the other men scattered through the valley, 20 of them maybe, all facing the same cold, the same hunger, the same slow war against a winter that refuses to end. Some of them won't make it, you know that. Bridger knows it too, even if he never says it aloud. The math is simple. Not enough food, not enough wood, not enough warmth, not enough time. Someone in this valley is going to die before the snow melts. Maybe several someones. In the quiet moments before sleep, when the fire burns low and the darkness is complete, when the only sounds are the wind outside and the wolves singing their endless song, you whisper the same prayer every night. Please God, not me, not yet, just let me see one more spring. Outside, the wolves keep circling, the snow keeps falling, and somewhere far to the east, in a world you can barely remember, the sun is probably shining on green fields and warm houses, on people who have never once had to wonder if they would live to see tomorrow. You pull the buffalo robe up to your chin, you try to remember what grass looks like, and you wait for morning. February arrives without ceremony, no calendar to mark it, no change in the weather to announce it, just more cold, more snow, more of the same relentless white. The horse meat is running low now. You've stretched it as far as it will go. Thin portions, weaker broth, every scrap of fat rendered, every bone boiled until the marrow is gone and the remains crumble like chalk. And still, winter holds on. But even with all that care, 2 horses only provide so much. 3 hungry men burn through provisions faster than any careful planning would like. Hunger doesn't respect arithmetic. It ignores good intentions. One morning, Jacob sits near the fire and does the math again. He counts what's left. He divides it by days. He recalculates, then recalculates again, hoping the numbers will change if he looks at them long enough. They don't. His face grows darker with each silent adjustment. 2 weeks, he says finally. Maybe less. William doesn't respond. He's been quiet ever since his horse died. He eats when food is placed in front of him, sleeps when there's nothing else to do. Otherwise, he's somewhere else entirely. As if part of him left with that animal and never found its way back. You nod. 2 weeks. Then what? You already know the answer. Everyone who's spent time in the mountains knows it. When the meat runs out, you eat whatever else you can find. And when that's gone, there are still 2 horses outside. Thinner now. Ribs visible beneath their winter coats. Alive. For now. You check on them every day. Break the ice from the water trough. Dig through the snow, scraping your hands raw, looking for whatever dried grass might still be buried underneath. They nicker weakly when you approach. They recognize you, trust you. The thought of killing them turns your stomach. The thought of starving turns it worse. You're not there yet. Not quite. There's still the leather. The thing about leather is that it used to be alive. It was skin once, muscle, fat, stretched and scraped and treated until it became something useful. Moccasins, belts, pouches, pack straps, knife sheaths. All of it animal once. All of it still carrying something of what that animal was made of. Collagen mostly, the stuff that holds skin together. If you cook it long enough, the human body can break it down. Sort of. Boil it until it softens. Chew it until your jaw aches. Swallow it and hope your stomach can figure out what to do with it. It won't keep you alive forever, but it might keep you alive long enough. You've heard the stories. Every mountain man has. Tales told around campfires at rendezvous, usually with laughter. Stories about some poor fool caught in a blizzard who had to eat his boots to survive. Always funny when you're sitting there with a full belly and a cup of whiskey in your hand. Hard to imagine eating your own moccasins. Until now. You start with the spare pair, the ones you'd been saving for when your current pair finally wore through. Good moccasins. Elk hide. Soft and supple from months of careful use. You cut them into strips with your knife, each piece about the width of your finger. It feels wrong. Cutting up something useful. Something that took skill to make. Something that might have kept your feet from freezing if you still had enough food to go anywhere. But you don't. And feet don't matter if you're dead. The pot goes over the fire, melted snow for water. The leather strips drop in one by one until you've got a stew of shoe parts bubbling quietly in front of you. It takes hours. The leather softens slowly, grudgingly, like it's resisting the idea of becoming food. You stir it now and then. Watch the water turn murky brown. Watch the strips lose their shape and become something that might possibly be chewable. The cabin fills with a strange smell. Not quite cooking meat, not quite anything else. Something in between. Something that makes your stomach growl, even as your mind recoils. When it's ready, you divide it 3 ways. Each man gets a portion of soggy, brownish leather strips and a cup of the water they cooked in. Leather broth, moccasin soup, a meal fit for kings. If kings were starving in a buried cabin in the Rocky Mountains with nothing else to eat. You pick up the first strip and put it in your mouth. Texture is wrong immediately. Even after hours of boiling, it's still tough, rubber-like. Your teeth sink in but won't cut through. You gnaw at it, working your jaw like a dog with a bone, grinding and tearing until small pieces finally break free and slide down your throat. The taste is worse. Smoky from the fire that dried it, slightly rancid from the fat that treated it, earthy from the dirt it walked through. And beneath all that, something else. Something that tastes like desperation, like failure, like the last stop before the end. Jacob takes a bite of his portion, chews for a long minute. Then he laughs. Actually laughs. The sound is strange in the cabin, rusted from lack of use. What's so funny? William asks. I'm eating a shoe, Jacob says, still chewing. 2 years ago, I was drinking champagne in St. Louis, had a girl on each arm. Thought I was the luckiest man alive. Now I'm sitting in a hole in the ground eating footwear. Was the champagne good? Terrible, but better than this. You laugh too. It hurts your cracked lips, but you laugh anyway. What else is there to do? Cry? You've done enough of that already. In the dark hours when no one's watching, you chew and chew and chew. The strip seems endless, refusing to break down, fighting you every step of the way. Your jaw aches, your teeth hurt, but you keep going because the alternative is nothing. And nothing leads somewhere you don't want to go. When you finally swallow the last piece, your stomach rebels. Not with nausea exactly, more like confusion, like it doesn't quite understand what you've given it or what it's supposed to do next. But after an hour or so, the hunger eases. Not much, not completely, just enough. Enough that you're not thinking about food every second, enough that you can function, enough that you can make it through another day. And for now, that's all survival asks of you. That's what eating leather is really about. Not nutrition, not pleasure, not even hunger in the way you used to understand it. It's about buying time, stretching the days a little longer, pushing death back one more sunrise. Over the following days you work methodically through everything made of hide, taking it slow, because there's no reason to rush. The spare moccasins go first, boiled until they soften, until they lose any memory of what they once were. Then the worn-out pair, the ones you've been wearing since October, soles so thin you could feel every rock and frozen root beneath your feet. After that comes the belt, then the pouches, then the straps from your pack, each piece cut into careful strips, each piece another quiet concession to reality. Eventually there's only one thing left, your knife sheath. The good one, the one your father gave you when you left Missouri. Beaver hide, thick and well cured, the stitching still strong despite everything. Your initials are carved into the leather, neat and deliberate, a small mark of pride from a different life. You turn it over in your hands for a long time, feeling the weight of it, the familiarity. It's a keepsake, a connection to home. And then, without ceremony, you eat that too. Because memories don't keep you alive, calories do. William refuses at first. His belt is different. It was a gift from his sweetheart, a girl named Sarah back in Ohio, who promised she'd wait for him. He's carried it across half a continent, worn it every single day, touched it. Whenever he needed reminding that somewhere out there, someone still cared. "Can't eat this," he says softly, holding it in both hands, turning it over again and again like it might offer another answer. "She'd want you to live," Jacob says. His voice is gentle, but there's no arguing in it. You don't know what she'd want. But you do know she wouldn't want him to starve to death clinging to a strip of leather. William doesn't respond right away. Minutes pass. The cabin is thick with smoke and shadow. Outside, the fire pops and crackles. The wind moans through the drifts like it's alive. Finally, William holds the belt out toward you. "Cut it up," he says. "I can't do it myself." You take it. You feel the weight. Notice the careful stitching, the love in every punched hole, every thread pulled tight by hands far away and long ago. Then you take your knife and begin cutting. The leather goes into the pot with everything else. When it's soft enough to chew, William eats his portion without a word. His face is empty. His eyes are somewhere else entirely. But he eats. When the leather finally runs out, there's nothing left to pretend about. You turn to hunting, real hunting, even though you already know the odds. The game is gone. You've known it for weeks. But gone doesn't always mean completely absent. In a winter this harsh, animals die where they stand. They freeze in their tracks, collapse in the snow, get caught in storms they can't escape. Their bodies stay out there, buried under drifts, frozen solid, waiting. You call it hunting, but it's really something else. Treasure hunting, grave robbing. You aren't looking for living animals, you're looking for dead ones. You head out on the first clear morning in weeks. The sun reflects off the snow so brightly it hurts your eyes, forcing you to squint just to see the ground in front of you. The cold is brutal. Cold enough that your nose hairs freeze with every breath. Cold enough that bare skin starts to ache within. Seconds. But you go anyway. You have to. The snowshoes help. Without them, you'd sink to your waist with every step. With them, you stay on top of the crust, moving slowly, steadily, across a world that feels empty. White stretches in every direction. No trees, no rocks, no landmarks, just snow and more snow rolling gently toward the mountains. You look for signs, a disturbance, a hump that doesn't belong, a shadow that doesn't match the land, anything. It takes 3 hours. Then you see it, an elk, a bull, judging by the size of the shoulder jutting through the drift. The rest of it is buried under 4 feet of packed snow. It must have died weeks ago, maybe months. It was probably walking when it happened, because it's still standing, frozen mid-stride. You imagine the storm that caught it, the confusion, the endless white. It kept walking until its legs failed and the cold finished the job. Its bad luck becomes your good fortune. That's the mountains. One creature's death feeding another. You dig, slowly. Your hands go numb almost immediately, and you keep stopping to warm them under your coat. The snow is packed hard, nearly ice. You don't have a shovel, so you use your knife, chip by chip, handful by handful, layer by layer, until the body emerges. The elk is frozen solid, hard as wood. The hide is stiff. The meat beneath doesn't cut cleanly. You hack at it, chipping away frozen flesh like carving ice. The pieces come off jagged, some still stuck to hide, some mixed with frozen blood and hair. It doesn't matter. You'll deal with it later. The work warms you even as your hands lose feeling. Sweat gathers beneath your fur cap. Your shoulders burn from the repeated motion. but you keep going. Every chunk is another day alive, another meal, another small step towards spring. This isn't leather, this is meat. Real meat. Elk. You load what you can onto a crude sled made from branches and rope, maybe 40 pounds. Not much, but enough. Then you start back, dragging it. Behind you as the sun sinks toward the mountains, praying you make it before dark. You do. Barely. The cabin appears as a darker shape against the twilight. Smoke curls from the chimney, thin and steady. The most beautiful sight you've seen in weeks. Inside, you drop the frozen meat near the fire. Jacob and William stare at it like it's gold. Elk, you say, though it doesn't need saying. Where? Jacob asks. North, mile or two. Been dead a long time. There's more. That's all that needs to be said. That night, you eat elk for the first time in months. The texture is strange, altered by freezing and thawing, but you don't care. It's food, protein, fat. Everything your body has been begging for. You eat until your stomach hurts. Then you eat a little more. And something unexpected happens. You feel good, not just alive, happy. The fire is warm, your belly is full, the air smells like roasting meat instead of burned leather. Jacob hums quietly, an old song from back east. William smiles, a real smile, the first since his horse died. You know what I miss? William says suddenly. Everything, Jacob answers. Besides everything. You think for a moment. Hot baths, a real bed, your mother's voice. Apples, Jacob says, fresh apples off the tree, that sound when you bite into one. William nods. Music, he says, a fiddle, dancing. Remember dancing? You do. It feels like someone else's life. We'll dance again, you say, even if you're not sure you believe it. Come summer, at rendezvous. We'll find a fiddle player and dance until our legs give out. Promise? Promise. It's small, almost foolish, but it matters. These moments matter. The quiet human ones tucked between suffering. The reminder that you're not just surviving, you're living badly and desperately, but living all the same. The next day, all three of you go back out. You dig out the rest of the elk and haul it home. 200 pounds maybe. Enough for a couple of careful weeks. And you are careful. But the elk is just the beginning. Now you know what to look for. A deer half buried near the tree line, legs broken from a fall. 2 rabbits frozen solid, preserved perfectly by the cold. A grouse, or what's left of one. You dig 'em all out. You eat 'em all. You don't ask questions. Food is food. Calories are life. Soon the other trappers begin doing the same. Word spreads quietly through the valley from cabin to cabin. There's game out there. If you're willing to dig, you start seeing tracks in the snow now, human tracks. They lead away from the low, rounded mounds that mark each camp, thin lines pressed deep into the white. Men heading out in the morning, rifles slung low, shoulders hunched against the cold. Men hunting for the dead. Some of them come back dragging something heavy behind them. Others return empty-handed, slower than when they left. A few don't return at all. You hear about it later, through the quiet whisper network that connects the cabins. News travels slowly out here, passed from mouth to mouth, from fire to fire. A man named Foster walked out one morning and never came back. 3 days later, his partners found him a mile from the cabin, face down in a drift. He'd been digging when the snow collapsed on him. Or maybe he just got too tired to keep going. Either way, it doesn't matter now. He's dead. Another name added to a list nobody writes down. You don't talk about Foster. You don't talk about any of them. There's no point. The dead are dead, and the living are busy staying alive. That's as much philosophy as you have room for. This is what survival looks like. Digging through snow for frozen corpses. Chewing leather until your jaw aches. Eating things that would make your mother weep if she ever knew. Watching friends disappear and pretending it doesn't matter. Because if you let it matter, If you really feel the weight of all this death and hunger and quiet desperation, you'll crack, you'll give up, you'll lie down in the snow like Foster and let the cold take you, and you're not ready for that. Not yet. Some nights, when the fire burns low and the darkness presses in close, when the only sound is the wind moving over the drifts outside, you think about what you've become. You think about the young man who left Missouri with dreams of adventure and fortune, the trapper who was going to conquer the wilderness, make his mark, and come home rich. Where did that man go? Maybe he's still here, buried deep under layers of grime and hunger and frozen elk meat, buried under the things you've done to stay alive. But still here, still breathing, still fighting. That has to count for something. You are still here, still standing, still pushing forward one day at a time. Somewhere far to the east, spring is getting closer. You can almost feel it. Not in the temperature, which is still cruel, not in the snow, which still refuses to ease, but in something else, a subtle change in the light, a slight lengthening of the days, a faint whisper of hope that manages to seep into the buried cabin despite everything. One day at a time, one meal at a time, one frozen carcass at a time. You tell yourself you're going to make it. You have to believe that, because the alternative is giving up. And giving up means dying. And you're not ready to die. Not after everything you've survived. Not when spring is still out there somewhere, waiting to melt the snow and open the world again. So you keep hunting, keep digging, keep chewing, and you wait for the thaw. The wolves stop circling. For weeks they've been out there at the edges of things, watching, waiting, learning your routines. You almost got used to them, the way you get used to any constant threat. Background noise, something to stay aware of, but not let consume you. And then one night in late February, everything changes. You're asleep when it happens, deep asleep. The heavy, exhausted unconsciousness that comes from days spent digging frozen meat out of frozen ground. The fire has burned low. The fat lamp gutters weakly. The cabin is dark and still and cold. Then the screaming starts, not human screaming, horse screaming. A sound you've never heard before and hope you never hear again. High, panicked roar. The sound of an animal that knows it's dying. You're on your feet before you're fully awake, rifle already in your hands. Heart hammering. Jacob is moving too, grabbing his weapon. William is slower, tangled in his robe, confusion written all over him. The horses, Jacob says. One word is enough. You throw open the cabin door and step into the frozen night. The moon is high, nearly full, turning the snow into silver. The shelter is 50 feet away, a rough lean-to against the rocks, and in front of it, moving like shadows poured onto the ground, are the wolves. 6 of them, maybe 7. Hard to tell when they won't stop moving. They've surrounded the shelter, cutting off escape, working together with a practiced precision that's almost unsettling. The 2 remaining horses are pressed against the back wall, eyes white, hooves striking the ground, that terrible screaming tearing out of them. You've seen wolves hunt before, from a distance, safe and removed. It seemed almost beautiful then, efficient, clean. This is not beautiful. This is teeth and blood and terror. One wolf darts in, too fast to follow. Its jaws lock onto a horse's leg and yank. The horse kicks, connects, sends the wolf spinning. Another is already there, snapping for the throat. A third circles behind, patient, waiting. They aren't fighting fair, they never do. They fight to win. You raise your rifle, aim, fire. The crack echoes across the valley. One wolf drops and doesn't get back up. The rest vanish instantly, melting into the darkness like smoke. One moment the night is full of movement and eyes. The next it's empty. Just moonlight, snow, and the sound of a horse dying. The horse is down, blood pumping from its throat, legs twitching weakly. You run to it. Jacob is beside you. There's nothing to be done. The artery's gone. Blood soaks into the snow, dark and steaming. The horse's eyes meet yours for a moment, then fade. Just like that. You stand there, rifle heavy in your hands, scanning the tree line. You know the wolves are still out there, watching, waiting. You count your bullets, 7 left, fewer than the wolves. We bring the other horse inside, Jacob says. Inside the cabin. Where else? Leaving it out means losing it. Tonight or tomorrow. The wolves know now, they've learned. So you do something that would have sounded insane months ago. You lead the surviving horse through the cabin door, squeezing her bulk through a frame never meant for animals. You tie her in the corner where William used to sleep. William doesn't argue. He just moves his bedroll and looks away. The cabin smells like horse now. Manure, sweat, fear, mixed with smoke and grease and human stink. The horse shifts constantly, nervous, hooves scraping. When she relieves herself, you shovel it out into the snow and hope the smell doesn't bring the wolves back. This is ridiculous, Jacob says. We're living with a horse. Would you rather be living without one? He doesn't answer. William reaches out and touches the horse's nose. The first living thing he's touched in weeks. She calms a little. So does he. She needs a name, he says quietly. You hadn't thought about that. The horses were always just tools. But now somehow it feels different. Hope, Jacob says. Might as well. It's corny, sentimental, but it fits. Hope shifts in her corner, nibbles at the moss between the logs and settles, and you lie down near the fire, listening to her breathing, counting bullets in your head, waiting for sleep. This is what your life is now. Cold, hunger, danger, but also small kindnesses, quiet connections, flickers of warmth in the dark. The wolves don't give up. They come back the next night, and the night after that, patient and relentless. You hear them outside the cabin walls, moving just beyond the thin barrier of logs and packed snow. You hear them sniffing at the cracks, scraping at the drifts you've piled up for insulation, testing every weakness. One night you wake to a new sound, digging, slow, deliberate. They're trying to tunnel in. You grab a burning stick from the fire and fling the door open. 3 wolves are right there, no more than 10 feet away, caught mid-motion. For a frozen heartbeat, nobody moves. You stare at each other. Their eyes catch the firelight and glow. Their breath steams in the air. Then they're gone, melting back into the darkness as if they were never there at all. Smoke in moonlight. You don't sleep much after that. Word spreads through the valley, carried quietly from camp to camp. Other trappers are dealing with the same thing. A man named Henderson lost both his horses in a single night. Walked outside at dawn and found nothing but bones and blood pressed into the snow. The wolves had eaten everything, meat, organs, even part of the hide, left only a skull and a few cracked bones, split open neatly for the marrow. Another trapper, a Frenchman named Beaumont, lost his dog, a big mongrel, part mastiff, that had been with him for 6 years. Beaumont heard the fight but couldn't get outside in time. He found what was left of the dog 50 yards from the cabin, torn open, steam still rising from the wounds. He buried the remains himself and didn't speak for 3 days after. The worst story comes from a cabin half a mile upstream. A man named Collins, working alone after his partners died of the smoke sickness back in December. One morning he doesn't answer when the neighboring camp checks on him. The door is open, the fire is cold, Collins is gone. They find tracks, human tracks and wolf tracks mixed together, leading into the forest. The snow tells the story if you know how to read it. Collins must have stepped outside for some reason. Maybe he heard something. Maybe he just needed a moment of air. He got maybe 200 yards from his door before the wolves found him. The tracks show the chase. Collins running, stumbling in the deep snow, the wolves spreading out, flanking him, cutting off escape. Then a place where everything is torn up, snow kicked in every direction, stained pink, then red, then darker. They follow as far as they dare. First they find his rifle, then his hat, then a single moccasin torn and bloody. The wolves dragged him into the timber. The men don't follow, not with darkness coming on, not with the wolves likely, watching from the trees, waiting. They never find Collins, no body, no bones, nothing but scraps of clothing and the story written into the snow. You hear this sitting around Bridger's fire, one of the rare times the weather eases enough for the scattered camps to gather. Bridger tells it flat. No drama, just facts. But his eyes are hard, and his hand never leaves his rifle. They're not afraid of us anymore, he says. Hunger's burned the fear out of them. They see us as prey now. Nobody argues. You've all felt it. That shift. For years, wolves avoided camps, feared rifles, but starvation changes things. It makes predators bold, and it makes prey weak. Right now, huddled in buried cabins, low on food and ammunition, you're the vulnerable ones. So you change how you live. You never go outside alone. You always carry a rifle loaded and ready. When you dig for frozen game, one man works while the others stand guard, scanning the tree line. Bridger sets up a system with gunshots. 1 shot means need help. 2 shots means wolves spotted. 3 shots means someone's dead. You hear 3 shots more often than you'd like. The wolves get bolder. They stop running when you step outside. They stand and watch, yellow eyes calm and calculating. You stare back, rifle raised, wondering the same thing they are. Who's weaker? Who's closer to giving up? One afternoon you're returning from a scavenging trip when you see them. A whole pack, maybe a dozen, spread out in a loose line across the snow between you and the cabin. Not attacking, just waiting, blocking your path. Your heart hammers. There are 3 of you, 12 of them. The math is bad. You've got frozen rabbit in your pack, 15 pounds of hard. 1 meat. The wolves can smell it. They've probably been tracking you for miles, waiting. Jacob raises his rifle slowly. Nobody run, he says. You run, you die. We walk. Slow. What if they charge, William whispers. Then we shoot the first 3 and pray the rest lose their nerve. They don't charge. Not yet. They're testing you. You start walking, 1 step at a time, snow crunching, eyes forward. Some of the wolves sit down, relaxed. 1 yawns, showing teeth long as your fingers. 20 feet. 15. 10. The big male steps forward, the one you've seen before, scarred muzzle, ribs showing through matted fur. Starving, same as you. You stop. He doesn't move. The world narrows to the space between you. You see ice crystals in his fur, see the tension in his muscles, see the hunger in his eyes. He's calculating risk versus reward, meat versus bullet. For a long moment, nothing happens. You hear your own breathing. Jacob's, William murmuring something that might be a prayer. Then the wolf steps aside, just 1 step. The others follow, parting like water, opening a narrow path. You walk through, slow, steady, not looking at them, close enough to feel their breath. Then you're past, then you're at the cabin, then you're inside, door barred, hands shaking. What was that? William asks, voice breaking. Jacob shakes his head. Don't know, he was deciding, you say. Just not today. That night you clean your rifle again, count your bullets, 6 left. Outside the wind moans. Somewhere in the dark the wolves wait. You used to think you were a hunter. The wolves disagree. You're not a master of anything, not out here. You're just another animal trying to make it. Through the night. The wolves know it. The cold knows it. The mountains have always known it. And strangely, that understanding brings a kind of relief. You don't have to pretend anymore. Don't have to live up to some story told back east about fearless mountain men and untamed wilderness. All of that falls away. What's left is simple. Survive. 1 day at a time. 1 meal at a time. 1 narrow escape at a time. Simple and terrifying, but simple. You curl deeper into your buffalo robe, pulling it tight around your shoulders. Your rifle rests within arm's reach, exactly where it needs to be. You listen to the night. The wind howls the way it always does, pushing against the cabin walls, Hope shifts softly in her corner, the quiet sound of her breathing steady and calm. The logs creak as they settle in the cold, and beneath it all, so faint you might imagine it, there's the soft pad of paws on snow. The wolves are out there planning, but so are you. Tomorrow might go badly. Tomorrow might go fine. You'll find out when you get there. For now, you close your eyes. You let your body rest. You focus on the sound of Hope breathing, slow and even, almost peaceful. Somewhere outside, a wolf begins to howl, then another joins in, then another. Soon the valley fills with their voices, rising and falling together. You don't flinch. You're used to it now. You pull the robe a little tighter and wait for morning. March arrives like a monster. You thought you'd seen bad storms before. You were wrong. The blizzard that hits in the first week of March is something else entirely, something biblical. Wind screaming down from the peaks at 60, 70 miles an hour. Snow falling so thick you can't see your own hand in front of your face. Temperatures dropping into places that shouldn't exist outside of nightmares. The cabin groans under the assault. You hear the logs shifting, the roof creaking, the packed snow insulation being stripped away layer by layer. At one point, a gust slams into the door so hard it bows inward, and for a terrifying moment you're sure the whole structure is about to collapse. It doesn't. Somehow it holds. But you spend 3 days huddled inside, not daring to open the door, burning through firewood faster than you want to think about, waiting. When the storm finally breaks, you dig your way out into a world you barely recognize. Snow has drifted in places 15 feet deep or more. The horse shelter is gone, completely buried. The paths between cabins have vanished, erased as if they never existed. The valley looks alien now, white, smooth, empty, like the surface of the moon. Bridger calls a meeting 2 days later. Once enough men have dug themselves free to make travel possible. The news is bad. 2 cabins collapsed under the weight of the snow. 1 man crushed in his sleep, 3 others injured, 1 badly enough that no one expects him to last long. And the food situation has gone from desperate to critical. The frozen game you'd been scavenging is now buried under another 6 feet of snow. Finding it would mean digging for hours, maybe days, with no guarantee. The carcasses you'd marked are gone, swallowed completely. Their locations impossible to judge. You need fresh meat, living animals. The problem is they're down in the lower valleys, miles away, beyond snow deep enough to swallow a man to his neck. Bridger asks for volunteers, men willing to make the trip. Everyone knows what it means. It's a suicide mission, but the alternative is starving right where you stand. You step forward. So does Jacob. William doesn't. He's too weak now. His face shows relief and shame mixed together when you tell him. "I'll be here when you get back," he says. You don't tell him you might not. There are 6 of you. Bridger stays behind. He clasps your hand before you leave, looks you in the eye and says nothing. There's nothing left to say. You leave at dawn, snowshoes strapped on, rifles loaded, packs filled with what little food remains. The plan is simple. Head down the valley, find game, kill what you can, drag it back 3 days, maybe 4. If you're not back in a week, no one will expect you at all. The first day goes well enough. The snow is deep but manageable. You follow the frozen river, pushing steadily forward. By evening you've covered 8 miles. You camp among pines, build a fire, huddle close for warmth. The second day starts wrong. The sky looks heavy, unsettled. The wind picks up by midday. By early afternoon, snow starts falling again. Real snow. Blizzard snow. "We need to turn back," Hawkins says. His voice is tight with fear. Jacob shakes his head. "If we turn back now, we've wasted 2 days. Camp has no food. They'll die if we don't come back. They'll die if we get caught out here too. So we don't get caught," Jacob says. "We find shelter. We wait it out." The argument circles until the storm answers for you. The wind slams into you like a wall. Snow erases the world. You can't see 10 feet ahead. The cold is pain now. Sharp, burning. The wind drives ice into your skin. "Stay together," someone shouts, barely audible. And you press on, step by step, into the white. Hold on to each other. Don't let go. That's all there is to it now. You grab the back of Jacob's coat with numb fingers. Someone grabs hold of you in return. The six of you link together, a fragile human chain, stumbling blindly through the whiteout. The wind erases everything. Direction, distance, sense. You move because stopping feels worse than moving, even though every step costs more than the last. You search for anything, trees, rocks, a rise in the ground, something, anything that might break the wind. There's nothing. The valley floor is wide and open, a flat, merciless bowl of snow and air in motion. No shelter, no protection, just the slow, creeping certainty that this is how it ends. "Snow cave," Jacob yells, his mouth close to your ear so you can hear him over the wind. "We dig." You know what that means? A hole carved into a drift, just big enough to crawl into. Snow as insulation. Snow as shelter. The Inuit do it, trappers do it when they have no other choice. It's a last resort, a gamble. But standing here means freezing to death in minutes. You start digging. The snow is hard, crusted by wind, almost like ice. You claw at it with gloved hands, with your knife, with whatever you have. Your fingers go numb almost immediately, pain fading into nothing. You don't stop. You can hear Jacob digging beside you. Somewhere nearby, the others are doing the same, invisible in the white, reduced to faint voices swallowed by the storm. Your body wants to stop. Every part of you begs for rest, for stillness, for sleep. It would be so easy to lie down and let the snow cover you, heavy and quiet like a blanket. But you keep digging because stopping means dying. And you're not ready. Not here. Not like this. The hole deepens. 2 feet, 3, 4. You carve out a small chamber at the end, just big enough for 2 men to curl up inside. You use your knife to smooth and pack the walls, pressing loose snow into solid shapes. You remember hearing that packed snow insulates better than air. Half. Remembered advice, fragments of stories, all you have to work with. The wind dulls. Inside the hole it's quieter, warmer, not warm but survivable. Maybe 10 degrees, maybe 20. Enough that blood can still move, enough that hearts can keep beating. You and Jacob crawl inside. You drag your packs in after you. You block the entrance with more snow, leaving a small hole for air. You remember that part clearly. Seal it too tight and you suffocate. Snow traps air, but it doesn't make new air. You think about men who went to sleep and never woke up. You don't want to be one of them. Then you wait. Outside, the storm rages on. You can hear it now only as a muffled roar, the sound of the world trying to kill you and being held back by a few feet of packed white. Inside the snow cave, the darkness is complete. No fire, no light, just breathing, and cold. "We need to get warm," Jacob says. His voice sounds wrong, thick, slurred. "Need fire." You fumble in your pack. Flint, steel, tinder. A bit of dried grass you stuffed in there days ago without thinking much about it. Your hands are shaking so badly you can barely hold the flint. You strike it. Nothing. Again. Nothing. The spark dies instantly, swallowed by the cold. Your fingers feel thick, useless, like they don't belong to you anymore. The cold has crept into your bones, into your muscles, turning them rigid and slow. "Can't manage," you hear yourself say. The words come out wrong. Your lips are numb. Your tongue feels heavy. Jacob reaches for the flint. His hands are worse than yours, white, stiff. He drops it into the snow and gropes for it blindly, unable to feel anything. You know what's happening. The cold is winning. Your thoughts are slowing, blurring. A strange calm settles in. A part of you thinks how nice it would be to sleep. How peaceful, how warm it sounds. That's the cold talking. That's death whispering. You don't listen. Somehow you find the flint again. You don't know how. You just do. You pick it up with fingers that can't feel it, position it over the tinder with hands that barely obey. You strike, again and again and again. Sparks fly. Most of them die in the air. A few land and glow briefly before going dark. The grass is too cold, too damp from your frozen breath. It won't catch. Not like this. Not after everything. You rip off your mittens. Your hands are white and waxy, the color of dead fish. You cup them around your mouth and breathe on them, forcing warm air over frozen skin. The pain hits instantly, sharp, blinding, like plunging your hands into boiling water, blood forcing its way back into places it had abandoned. The pain means they're still alive. You try again. A spark lands, glows, starts to fade. You blow on it gently, carefully, like coaxing something fragile into being. The ember grows, catches the edge of a blade of grass. You hold your breath. You blow again, soft and steady. On the 20th try, maybe the 30th, the tinder smoulders. Then, finally, it catches. A tiny flame appears, small, fragile, almost unbelievable, orange and yellow and alive, flickering in the darkness of the snow cave like a promise you're afraid to trust. You stare at it for a long moment, hardly breathing, as if too much attention might make it disappear. Then you feed it, slowly, carefully, one blade of dried grass at a time. The flame grows, just a little, enough to matter. You add more fuel, tiny twigs pulled from your pack, strips of cloth torn from your spare shirt, the paper wrapping from your extra powder horn. Anything that will burn, anything you can spare. The fire takes hold. It's small, smoky, weak, but it's alive, and alive is enough. You and Jacob huddle close, hands stretched toward the warmth. As feeling returns to your fingers, the pain hits hard, sharp and deep, like hot needles driven into frozen flesh. You gasp, grit your teeth, ride it out. Pain means blood is moving again. Pain means the tissue isn't dead. Pain means you're still here. Time loosens its grip. Hours pass without shape or structure. You drift in and out of consciousness, waking to feed the fire, to shift closer, to listen to the storm pounding uselessly against the snow walls. The flame burns low. You feed it again. Moccasin laces, leather ties from your pack, the wooden handle of a tool you won't miss. Piece by piece, you trade possessions for warmth. At some point, Jacob starts laughing. Not wild laughter, not quite sane either, just quiet, breathy laughter that echoes strangely in the small space. "What?" you ask. Your voice sounds rough, scraped raw. "I just realized," he says slowly, "if we die in here, no one will ever find us. We'll be perfectly preserved. Best corpses in the world." You snort softly. "Go on. Archaeologists will dig us up in 1,000 years and wonder what we were doing. Two idiots frozen in a snow cave. Hopefully," you say, "they figure out we were trying not to die." "Maybe," Jacob says. "Or maybe they think it was a ritual. Sacrifices to the snow gods. The snow gods can go to hell." Jacob exhales a laugh. "Pretty sure this is hell. Just colder than advertised." You laugh too. It hurts your cracked lips and frozen cheeks, but you laugh anyway. Because you can. Because Jacob's still breathing. Because the fire is still there, stubborn and alive. Silence settles again. The fire crackles softly. The wind howls beyond the walls. Snow shifts and settles around you, the cave creaking as if it's breathing. "I thought we were dead," Jacob whispers. "We might still be," you say. "Storm's not over." "No," he says. "But we're not dead yet. Not yet." You sit like that for a while, letting the warmth seep slowly into your bones. "You know what keeps going through my head?" Jacob says. "What?" "A hot bath. Back in the settlements, tin tub in front of the fire, hot water up to your neck, steam rising, you remember. It feels like remembering another life, another person." "Yeah," you say quietly, "I remember." "First thing I'm doing," Jacob says, "when we get back to civilization, biggest tub I can find, Hottest water I can stand. I'll sit there until I forget what cold feels like. You smile in the dark. That's a fine plan. Finest plan I ever had. The storm lasts through the night. By dawn the wind has died. The snow has stopped. You dig your way out of the cave and emerge into a changed world. Drifts piled high, sky dull and grey, and silence. A deep, ringing silence that only comes after something terrible has passed. The others are scattered across the valley. 2 more snow caves like yours. You find them one by one. Hawkins, Peters, 2 others who'd found shelter behind a rock outcropping. 6 men went out. 6 men survived the night. It feels unreal, like luck stretched to its breaking point. But the hunt is over. Everyone knows it without saying a word. The storm pushed you back miles, burned through your supplies, drained what strength you had left. You turn around and begin the long walk back to camp, empty-handed. No one talks much. There's nothing left to argue about. It takes 2 days to reach the cabins, 2 days of fighting through fresh snow, of rationing crumbs, of sleeping in shallow holes scraped into drifts. Your feet ache, swollen and damaged. Jacob's fingers are black at the tips. Hawkins coughs constantly, each sound wet and wrong. You're all breaking down, slowly, quietly. When you finally see smoke rising from the buried shapes of the camp, relief washes over you so strong it nearly hurts. Home. A strange word for a frozen pit filled with smoke, horses and starving men. But it's home. William meets you at the door. One look at your empty packs tells him everything. He's thinner now, sharper, hollowed out. He looks like a man already halfway gone. No game? He asks. Jacob shakes his head. William steps aside without a word. Inside, the cabin is warm. The fire burns steadily. After days of cold, it feels like paradise. The smoke, the stink, the dim glow of the fat lamp, all of it beautiful. You collapse onto your bed of pine boughs. The needles press into your back, familiar and comforting. You close your eyes, and you sleep, deep, heavy, the sleep of men who almost died, and didn't. Somewhere in the darkness you dream, not the sharp, broken dreams of cold and fear, but soft ones, gentle ones. Green fields stretching out under a warm sky, sun on your face, the smell of fresh bread baking, rich and comforting. Your mother's voice calling you in for dinner. Simple things, ordinary things. Things you never thought you'd miss and now feel impossibly far away. When you wake, the dream fades slowly, like mist burning off in the morning sun. Tomorrow, the hunger will return. Tomorrow, you'll have to think again. Tomorrow, the problems will still be there, piled up like the snow outside, waiting. But that's tomorrow. Tonight, you're alive, you're warm, you're home. And for now, that's enough. The days stretch out and lose their shape. Time stops feeling like time. You stop counting because counting doesn't change anything. One day slides into the next, each one nearly identical. Wake up, feed the fire, eat whatever scraps are available. Sit in the smoky hearth, light, sleep, repeat. The rhythm becomes automatic, mechanical, like a clock slowly winding. Down, mid-March. You think, maybe. The calendar you scratched into the cabin wall back in November has blurred into meaninglessness. The marks overlap. The days pile up into a number that doesn't matter anymore. The food situation has stabilized, if you can call it that. Stabilized at almost nothing. A handful of dried meat per day. Bits shaved from scavenged carcasses. Some pemmican bridger distributed from the company stores. Enough to keep you breathing. Not enough to feel alive. Your body has started turning on itself. You can feel it. The muscles in your arms and legs, once solid from years of hauling traps and fighting rivers, have shrunk down to thin cords beneath your skin. Your ribs show. Your face, reflected dimly in the water bucket, looks unfamiliar. Hollow cheeks, deep, set eyes, the face of a man disappearing by inches. Jacob looks worse. The frostbite on his fingers has spread. The blackened tips have cracked, oozing fluid that smells faintly rotten. He keeps them wrapped, says nothing about them, but you see the pain every time he moves his hands. Every small task costs him. William has gone somewhere else entirely. He's still there in the cabin, wrapped in his buffalo robe, sitting in his corner. But his mind has wandered off to places you can't follow. He talks to people who aren't there. His mother, his sweetheart Sarah, a brother he once mentioned, lost to fever. Long one-sided conversations whispered into the smoke and darkness. You don't interrupt. You've learned it's better to let him go where he's going. It brings him comfort, and comfort is rare. The horse died 3 days ago. The last one. Hope. You'd named her, and now she's gone. You'd known it was coming. She'd been failing for weeks, refusing food, standing motionless with her head low. When you found her down one morning, legs folded beneath her, breath shallow and weak, you felt something close to relief. You butchered her that day. Added the meat to your dwindling stores. The cabin smells different now. Emptier. The space where she stood feels hollow, like it echoes. William took it hard, harder than you expected. He'd named her, he'd talked to her, stroked her nose when she was restless. Now he just stares at the empty space where she used to be. She was a good horse, you say. It sounds foolish even to you. William doesn't answer. Jacob tries instead. She kept us alive, kept us company. That's more than most horses do. Still nothing. And now she's keeping us alive a different way, Jacob adds quietly. She'd want that, if horses want things. William finally looks up. His eyes are red but dry. Do you think horses go to heaven? He asks. It's such a young question. You almost forget how young he is. Barely 20. A kid who came west looking for adventure and found something else entirely. You think for a moment. I think, you say slowly, if there is a heaven, it probably has horses. Green fields, no winters, all the oats they can eat. William nods. That seems to satisfy him. The next morning he starts talking to Sarah again. You're glad. Silence is worse. 3 men in a buried cabin. No horses, no way out. Nothing to do but wait for a spring that feels like it may never come. So you find ways to fill the time. Jacob teaches you a card game he learned in New Orleans. Played with a deck so worn the faces are barely visible. You play for hours, betting imaginary fortunes, accusing each other of cheating. The rules barely matter. The distraction does. William starts drawing. You didn't know he could. He scratches pictures into the cabin wall with a charred stick. His mother's house, Sarah's face, hope running through a field of flowers. The drawings aren't very good, but he works at them carefully, adding details, erasing, starting over. It keeps him anchored. You tell stories. Every story you can remember. Fairy tales from childhood. Jokes overheard at rendezvous. Fragments of a novel you read years ago. Anything to break the silence. Anything to remind yourselves that you're still human beings, not just animals waiting out the winter. The psychological weight is still there. Heavy. Constant. But you learn to carry it. You've heard the stories. Men who lose themselves in places like this. Cabin fever. The walls closing in. The silence turning cruel. Men seeing things, hearing things, believing things that aren't real. Some walk out into the snow and never return. Others turn on each other, driven mad by confinement and hunger. You've seen it happen, so you talk, you play, you draw, you remember, and you wait. Back in your second winter there was a trapper named Jennings. A story you heard more than once, usually spoken quietly, late at night, when the fire was low and no one felt much like talking. Jennings had been in a cabin not unlike this one, buried, isolated, cut off for months at a time. At first everything was fine, then something inside him started to slip. He became convinced his partners were stealing from him, hiding food, eating more than their share while he slept. It started with looks, with questions asked a little too sharply, then accusations. His partners denied it. Of course they did. But denial only fed the idea. Over 3 days the tension grew, thick and poisonous. Words turned cruel, trust dissolved, and finally Jennings snapped. He grabbed his rifle and shot one of them dead in the cabin they shared. The other man survived long enough to kill Jennings with a hatchet, and then he sat there, alone, 2 bodies in the room with him. He stayed through the rest of the winter, waiting for spring, slowly losing his own mind. When a search party finally reached the cabin months later, they found him alive but gone. He couldn't speak, couldn't remember his own name. He just rocked back and forth, staring at nothing, making sounds that weren't words. That story has been living in your head lately. It plays on repeat in the dark hours, when the fire crackles low, and sleep won't come. You look at Jacob sometimes and wonder what he's thinking. You wonder if he ever looks at you the same way. You wonder how thin the line really is. Whether the 3 of you are one bad day away from becoming another cautionary tale told around campfires years from now. You feel it creeping in on you, the slow fraying of the edges. Some days you catch yourself staring at the wall for hours, unmoving, unthinking, just existing in a grey fog that dulls everything. Other days something hotter rises up inside you. A sudden, irrational anger, the urge to shout at Jacob, at William, at the fire, at the snow, at God, at anything. You don't shout, you swallow it, you breathe, you force your attention onto small things, the sound of the fire, the weight of the buffalo robe on your shoulders, the steady in and out of air through your lungs. You anchor yourself to the present moment because the past hurts too much and the future feels like a blank wall. Jacob copes in his own way. He talks, not really to you or William, but out loud, narrating whatever he's doing. Now I'm adding wood to the fire. Now I'm checking my powder. Now I'm mending this tear, like he's describing his life to someone just out of sight. You used to find it irritating, now you understand. The sound of a human voice, even your own, is a lifeline, proof that you still exist. William's conversations with people who aren't there have become longer, more detailed. Through them, you learn things you never knew. His father is a blacksmith in Ohio. His mother died when he was 7. Sarah has red hair and a laugh like bells. He promised he'd marry her when he got back from the mountains. Listening to him talk about her hurts, the certainty in his voice, the hope. You want to believe it's true. You want to believe he'll see her again. But looking at his wasted frame, the bones showing through his skin, the distant look in his eyes, you're not sure hope works the way people think it does. Survival, you're learning, isn't about big moments or heroic acts. It's about tiny choices, made over and over, to keep breathing, to keep moving, to keep going when everything inside you wants to stop. One afternoon, Bridger comes by. He's been making rounds, checking on the cabins, carrying what little news there is. His beard is wild, his eyes are rimmed red, his clothes hang loose on a body that's lost too much weight. He looks older than he should, like the winter has carved years into him. "How are you boys holding up?" he asks. You shrug. There isn't an answer that fits. He sits by the fire, accepts a cup of hot water, wraps his hands around it as if it's something precious. "Lost Harrison last night," he says quietly. "Went to sleep and didn't wake up. You remember Harrison, a trapper from Kentucky, 40 maybe. You'd shared whiskey with him at Rendezvous last summer, talked about the old days. He'd seemed solid then, indestructible. Mountain men always do, until they aren't." "How many now?" Jacob asks. Bridger stares into the fire, counting in his head. 12, he says at last. Maybe 13, hard to say. Some cabins I haven't reached in weeks. 12 out of 30 who started the winter, maybe more. And spring is still weeks away. "Anyone talking about leaving?" you ask. He shakes his head. Where would they go? Snow's too deep, passes are closed. Anyone who walks out now is just choosing a different way to die. He finishes his water and stands slowly, stiff with cold and hunger. "Just hold on," he says. "That's all any of us can do. Spring always comes. Sometimes it just takes its time." Then he's gone. The cabin feels smaller without him. The silence heavier. You sit there thinking about Harrison, about the others who didn't make it, about the men frozen in cabins Bridger couldn't reach, waiting for a spring that will never come. You think about how thin the line is, a little more food, a little more wood, a fire that keeps burning, such small differences, such arbitrary luck. Why you? Why not them? There's no answer. There never is. The mountains don't explain themselves. They just take what they take and leave what they leave. And the living are left to wonder. Night falls, or what passes for night. And you sit with the fire, breathing slowly, holding on. The darkness inside the cabin deepens slowly, fading from a dull grey into a thick, settled black. It feels heavy, almost physical, pressing in from the low ceiling and the packed snow beyond the walls. Jacob's breathing evens out beside you, slow and steady, the breath of a man who has learned how to sleep through hunger, cold and fear. William is murmuring again, his voice barely more than a thread of sound, words dissolving before they can reach meaning. You don't try to listen. You let it wash over you like wind through trees. Outside, the wind is moving through the valley, but gently now. Not the screaming fury of a storm, just a low, tired whisper. The cabin creaks softly as the temperature shifts. You lie on your bed of pine boughs, the sharp needles pressing into your back, and you let your thoughts drift toward home. Missouri, the farm. Your mother's face lined by years of worry and kindness. Your father's hands, thick and scarred, shaped by plows and fences and honest work. The smell of bread baking in the oven. The clucking of chickens in the yard. The sound of summer insects at dusk. Simple things, ordinary things. Things that once surrounded you so completely you never thought they could be taken away. That world still exists somewhere. You know it does. But it feels impossibly far now, beyond mountain ranges that might as well be walls. You wonder, not for the first time, if you'll ever see it again. When you left 3 years ago, you were certain you would. The mountains were just a detour, a way to earn money, to have an adventure before settling down. A few seasons trapping, enough saved to buy land. Then back east, a wife, children, a life that made sense. The plan feels childish now, a story you once believed because it was comforting. No more real than the fairy tales your mother read aloud when you were small. The mountains don't let people pass through untouched. They sink into your blood, into your bones. Even if you survive this winter, even if you make it back to Missouri, you know you won't be the same man who left. The cold has changed you. The hunger has changed you. The endless nights spent fighting panic and despair have left marks that won't wash off. You're older now in ways that have nothing to do with years. Harder, quieter, sharper around the edges. You don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's probably both. Sleep comes eventually, thin and broken. You drift in and out, pulled under by exhaustion and dragged back by dreams you can't quite remember. At some point in the night, you wake and add wood to the fire, moving by instinct in the darkness. The flames catch and flare, then settle into a steady glow. You sit there for a while watching them, letting your mind empty itself. Just make it to tomorrow. That's all. Just tomorrow. When morning comes, it brings something unexpected. Not spring, not yet, but a warm wind slipping down from the west. A chinook, the old timers call it. It rolls into the valley sometime before dawn, and when you wake, the air feels different, softer, less sharp. You push open the cabin door and step outside, blinking in the pale light. The temperature has risen sharply, 20 degrees or more. The snow is no longer screaming cold. It's settling, compacting under its own weight. Icicles hang from the roof of the buried cabin, thin and shining. Water drips from their tips, falling into the snow below. Water, moving, dripping. You haven't seen that in months. The sound feels strange and beautiful, a small rhythm you'd forgotten the world could make. Plip, plip. All winter long there's only been wind and fire and the groan of frozen wood. Now there's something else, something alive. You step farther out and let the warm wind brush your face. By any normal measure, it isn't warm at all, maybe just above freezing. But after months of temperatures that could kill a man in minutes, it feels almost gentle. You close your eyes and let it touch you. Jacob comes up beside you, squinting at the light, looking at the dripping ice. He doesn't say anything, but you see it in his face. A flicker, a loosening, something that wasn't there yesterday. Chinook, you say quietly. He nods. Won't last. Never does. But still, that word lingers between you still. Still it's something. Still it's proof that winter loosens its grip, even if only for a moment. Still it's a reminder that nothing lasts forever, not even this. The Chinook draws people out of their cabins. For the first time in weeks, you see other trappers moving through the valley. Thin, hollow men wrapped in ragged furs, blinking in the light like animals emerging from underground. They gather near Bridger's cabin, maybe a dozen of them, standing in the warm wind without much to say. You walk over and join them. The faces are familiar and strange all at once. Men you once knew, reshaped by hunger and cold, beards tangled, eyes sunk deep, bodies carved down to bone and sinew. No one mentions how many are missing. No one speaks of the cabins that sit silent now, their chimneys cold, their owners gone. Bridger stands at the center of the group, looking out over the softening snow. He breathes in the warmer air, slow and careful, like he doesn't quite trust it. When he finally speaks, his voice is low and calm, almost reverent, as if afraid to disturb the fragile moment. The darkness inside the cabin slowly deepens, fading from a dull grey into a heavy, complete black. It happens so gradually that you barely notice it at first. The edges of the room soften, then disappear altogether. Somewhere nearby, Jacob's breathing settles into a slow, steady rhythm. It's the breathing of a man who has learned, over many hard seasons, how to sleep through cold, hunger, and fear alike. William is murmuring again, his voice low and indistinct, the words blurred together into something that sounds more like a memory than speech. No one answers him. No one needs to. Outside, the wind moves through the trees in its familiar way, but tonight it feels gentler, less sharp, as if even it is tired of the long winter. You lie still on your bed of pine boughs, the scent of resin faint but comforting, and your thoughts drift, unhurried, toward home. Missouri, the farm. Your mother's face, soft and patient, bent over the table. Your father's hands, rough and cracked from years of working the soil, steady and strong. You remember the smell of bread baking, warm and yeasty, filling the house. You remember the quiet clucking of chickens in the yard, the simple sounds of a life measured by daylight and seasons that made sense. These are small things, ordinary things, but they feel impossibly distant now. They exist somewhere beyond the mountains, beyond walls of stone and snow that might as well stretch forever. You wonder, without much urgency, whether you will ever see that world again. When you left 3 years ago, you were sure you would. The mountains were just a detour, a temporary hardship. You would trap for a few seasons, earn your stake, then head back east. You would buy land. You would build a house. There would be a wife, children, a life that unfolded predictably, year after year. Lying here now, that plan feels thin and unreal, like a story you once told yourself to make the future less frightening, no more solid than the fairy tales your mother read to you when you were a boy. The mountains do not let people go so easily. They settle into you, into your blood and your bones, and they stay there. Even if you survive this winter, even if you somehow make it back to Missouri, you know you will not be the same. The cold has worked its way into you. The hunger has carved out empty spaces that will never quite fill again. The long nights, spent fighting sleep and sanity in equal measure, have left their marks. You are no longer the boy who rode west full of plans and confidence. You are harder now, quieter, older in ways that have nothing to do with time. You don't try to decide whether that is good or bad. It is simply what is. Sleep comes eventually, thin and restless. It breaks apart into fragments, shallow dreams that dissolve before you can grasp them. At some point in the night you wake, guided by habit more than thought, and add wood to the fire. In the absolute darkness you move carefully, knowing where everything is by feel alone. The flames catch, flare briefly, then settle into a steady, reliable burn. You sit and watch them, letting your mind empty. Tomorrow, you think. Just make it to tomorrow. When morning comes, it brings something unexpected. Not spring, not yet, but a warm wind drifting in from the west. The old timers call it a chinook. It arrives quietly, sometime before dawn, and when you wake, the air feels different, softer, less deadly. You push open the cabin door and step outside, blinking against the pale light. The temperature has climbed sharply, 20 degrees or more. Snow that once stood hard and brittle now sags under its own weight. Icicles hang from the buried cabin roof, dripping steadily. Water. You haven't seen liquid water in months. The sound of it, soft and rhythmic, feels almost musical. Plip. Plip. A sound you'd forgotten existed. All winter long there have only been a few sounds: wind, fire, the creak of frozen wood. Now there is something else, something alive. You step farther outside and let the warm wind touch your face. By any normal measure it isn't warm at all, maybe 35, maybe 40 degrees. But after months of cold that could kill you in minutes, it feels like summer. You close your eyes and let it pass over you. Jacob joins you, standing quietly at your back. He looks at the dripping icicles, says nothing, but there is something different in his expression, a small shift, a flicker that might be hope, or might simply be the absence of despair. Chinook, you say softly. He nods. It won't last. It never does. But still, the word hangs between you, unspoken but understood. Still, it is something. Still, it is a reminder that winter does not go on forever. Somewhere beyond the horizon, spring is gathering itself, preparing to return. The Chinook draws people out of their cabins. For the first time in weeks, you see other trappers moving through the valley. Thin, hollow figures wrapped in ragged furs, blinking in the light like animals emerging from burrows. They gather near Bridger's cabin, a dozen or so men standing in the warm wind, not saying much, just breathing. You walk over and stand among them. The faces are both familiar and strange, men you knew before the winter, altered by months of cold and hunger. Beards grown wild, eyes sunk deep into their sockets, bodies reduced to bone and sinew. No one mentions the missing. No one counts the faces that should be there but aren't. The silence does that work on its own. Bridger stands at the center of the group, looking out over the softening land. When he speaks, his voice is quiet, measured. A few more weeks, maybe a month. Then the pass will open. Then you can move. A month sounds like an eternity and nothing at all. You've made it this far. Surely you can make it a little longer. And yet, as you look around at the men beside you, you know some of them won't. Winter isn't finished taking what it wants. It will claim a few more before it loosens its grip. You just don't know who. The Chinook lasts 3 days. Then the cold returns, sharp and familiar. But something has changed. The snow no longer feels endless. The days stretch a little longer into the evening. The light seems clearer, brighter. Spring is coming. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. All you have to do is hold on. The real thaw arrives in the second week of April. This time it isn't a tease. The sun climbs higher each day, staying longer in the sky. The snow that buried the valley since November begins to retreat, slowly at first, then faster. One morning you wake to a sound that feels almost impossible. Birds, actual birds singing. You lie still, listening, wondering if your mind has finally slipped. But when you open the cabin door, they are there. Small brown shapes hopping through the slush, pecking at bare ground, life returning. The snow vanishes quickly now. Drifts that once towered over cabins shrink day by day. Paths reappear, muddy and uneven but passable. The river you crossed on solid ice in January runs free again, carrying chunks of ice downstream like small white boats. And as the snow pulls back, it reveals what it has been hiding. The first body you find is Cooper. He lies face down in a drift that has melted to his shoulders, one arm stretched forward as if reaching for something just out of sight. You and Jacob dig him free. The cold preserved him. His face is calm, eyes closed. He probably lay down when he couldn't go on and simply didn't wake up. You bury him as best you can, piling rocks over the shallow grave. You remember his wife, his children back in Virginia. You remember the lock of blonde hair he once showed you, kept in a leather pouch. You don't find it. Maybe it's still buried. Maybe it's gone. There are more bodies. Henderson, seated against a tree, rifle across his knees. A young man whose name you never learned, lying in a meadow, eyes open to the sky. You say the same quiet words for each of them and keep walking. Then there are the cabins that never come back to life, cold chimneys, doors frozen shut. Inside, two brothers from Pennsylvania lie in their beds, fire long gone, woodpile empty. They simply ran out of time. Spring keeps coming anyway, and all you can do is move forward with it, carrying the weight of winter quietly, step by step, into whatever comes next. They burned everything they could. First the furniture, then the door frame, then pieces of the walls themselves. Anything that would catch and hold a flame, they fed into the fire. When there was nothing left to burn, when even the smallest scraps were gone, they lay down together and let the cold take what remained. You can see it clearly in the empty cabin, the blackened hearth, the scorched marks where wood once stood. It tells the story without words. You recognize one of them. Thomas Mitchell, he called himself, though you never knew if that was his real name. He'd taken money from you at cards during the rendezvous last summer. A good player. Quick hands, quicker smile. He talked about plans then, about saving enough to start a trading post somewhere along the river. A fixed place, a future that made sense. His brother's name you never learned. You stand for a long moment, looking down at Thomas's face, peaceful, almost smiling. You find yourself wondering what he was dreaming about when the cold finally claimed him. Something warm, you hope, something green. Should we say something? Jacob asks quietly. Like what? You answer. I don't know. A prayer, something. You search your memory for the prayers your mother taught you long ago. The words come slowly, stiff and unused, but they come. You speak them softly into the cold, dead air of the cabin. They sound small, inadequate, but they are all you have. When you finish, you close the door and mark the place with a pile of stones. Someone will have to return later, when the ground fully thaws, when there is time and strength to spare, if anyone ever does. The second silent cabin is worse, much worse. 4 men dead for weeks, maybe months. You smell it before the door even opens. Rot and decay, held back by the cold but not stopped entirely. You don't go inside. You don't need to. You close the door again, mark the location, and walk away. Some things do not need to be seen. Some memories are not worth carrying. Bridger keeps count. He writes the names down in the same small book he uses to track beaver pelts and trade goods. 18 dead by the final tally. 18 out of 30 who entered the winter. More than half gone. Some were men you knew well, some you barely knew at all. But every name in Bridger's book represents a life that once expected to continue, a life with plans, with people waiting far away, people who will wait and wonder and eventually stop waiting. When the snow melts enough to move freely, the survivors gather at Bridger's cabin. 12 men, not counting Bridger himself. 13 out of 30. You look around and barely recognize anyone. These are not mountain men the way you once imagined them. Their skeletons are wrapped in skin, cheekbones jut sharply, eyes sit huge and dark in hollow sockets, beards hang in tangled mats. Clothes that once fit now hang loose on wasted frames. They look like ghosts, like men who should have died but somehow didn't. You look the same. You've seen yourself reflected in the river. You know what the winter has done. Jacob stands beside you, his left hand wrapped in dirty bandages. Wells, the trapper who knows a little about medicine, has already examined it. 2 fingers will have to come off. The black has spread too far. Jacob accepted the news with a nod and nothing more. 2 fingers is a small price to pay for staying alive. William is there too, though he isn't really present. He stands at the edge of the group, staring into nothing, his lips moving as if he's speaking to someone only he can see. The winter broke something in him, something that may never heal. Bridger has arranged for 2 men to escort him back east once the pass opens. Whether he'll ever truly return is something no one can say. Bridger speaks to the group. His voice is hoarse, worn thin by months of smoke and cold and worry. He tells you that you made it. Those standing here made it. That it counts for something. No one cheers. No one celebrates. Whatever victory this is feels hollow. There are too many empty places where friends should be standing. The passes should open in 2 or 3 weeks, Bridger says. Until then, you'll stay here. Rest. Regain what strength you can. There's game in the valley now. Elk, deer, enough to eat, enough to recover. Then you'll head for rendezvous at Green River. Same as always. Sell the pelts, tell the stories, decide what comes next. What comes next? You haven't thought that far ahead. Winter took everything. There was no room for futures, only for survival. Only the next fire, the next meal, the next sunrise. Now suddenly there is space again. A tomorrow, a next week, a next month. It stretches out before you, empty and unfamiliar, and you don't quite know how to step into it. With the thaw comes the game. Elk first. Big bulls moving down from the high country, new antlers just beginning to grow, drawn by the first green grass. Then deer, then smaller creatures, rabbits, grouse, squirrels. The valley fills again after months of emptiness. It feels as though life simply returns all at once, summoned by something ancient and unquestionable. Winter is over, time to move, time to eat, time to live. You hunt again, real hunting this time, not the desperate scavenging of winter. You track a bull elk through the greening valley, moving slowly, reading the signs left behind. Bent grass, fresh droppings, a tree scraped raw where he rubbed his antlers. The old skills come back to you, stiff but usable. As you move, you feel something stir inside your chest. Not excitement, not relief, something quieter, something like gratitude. You find him in a meadow, grazing calmly, unaware. You settle into position, slow your breathing. Wait. The rifle kicks against your shoulder. Smoke drifts away. The elk falls. No suffering, no struggle, just a clean end. You stand there for a moment afterward, listening to the wind move through the grass, feeling the warmth of the sun on your face, and for the first time since the winter began, the world feels solid again. Not safe, not easy, but real. And for now, that is enough. You butcher it right there where the elk fell. There's no ceremony to it, no hesitation. You work quickly and carefully, letting habit take over. Your hands know what to do even if your mind drifts elsewhere. The cuts are clean. The meat is fresh, red and warm, untouched by rot or frost. No freezer burn, no desperation, just good, honest protein. Exactly what your body has been craving for months without mercy. You pack as much as you can carry and start the long haul back to camp. Your legs tremble with the effort, muscles weak and underfed, but there's a strange lightness in your chest. Each step hurts, but it's a good pain, a useful pain. When you finally stagger into camp and drop the load, the others look at the meat like it's something unreal, something borrowed from another world. That night, you eat until your stomach aches. All of you do. Thick cuts of elk roasted over an open fire, fat sizzling, grease dripping into the flames and making them leap and flare. After months of leather, horse meat and frozen scraps scraped from bones, the taste is overwhelming. Rich, clean, alive, better than anything you can remember eating, better than your mother's cooking, better than the feast at your sister's wedding. You keep eating even when your stomach protests, your body desperate to store what it can before the next hunger comes. When you finally can't eat anymore, you lie back and stare up at the stars. For the first time in months, you feel something close to happiness. Not joy, winter took too much for that, but something warmer and quieter, something steady. The stars above you are the same ones you watched back in September, before the snows came. Same patterns, same cold light. But they look different now, brighter, more precious. You understand something you didn't before. The stars don't care about you, neither do the mountains, neither does the vast, indifferent universe stretching out in every direction. It doesn't care if you live or die, succeed or fail, make it home or freeze in a drift. You're just another animal fighting to survive on a spinning rock. And when you're gone, the stars will keep burning, the mountains will keep standing, the snow will keep falling every winter forever. Strangely, that thought doesn't depress you anymore. It frees you. If the universe doesn't care, then the meaning is yours to choose. You decide what matters. You choose to live. You choose to remember the men who didn't make it. You choose to carry their stories forward, to tell people what happened here so the winter of 1836 to 37 doesn't disappear into silence. That feels like enough. The days continue to lengthen. Snow melts back inch by inch. Green begins to show on the hillsides, tentative at first, then spreading with quiet confidence. The air smells different now. Wet earth, thawing ground, the faint promise of warmth. You spend the weeks recovering, eating whenever there's food, letting your body slowly rebuild the muscle and fat it consumed to stay alive. Walking short distances at first, then longer ones. Testing legs that haven't truly worked in months. Mending gear, cleaning rifles, preparing, slowly and carefully, for the journey ahead. The pelts you trapped in the fall are still there, bundled and preserved by the cold. Not as many as you'd hoped. The early snows cut the season short. Still, they're worth something. One afternoon you sort through them, checking for damage, counting what you have. Mostly beaver, thick prime fur, a few otter, some marten, maybe $300 if the prices hold, maybe less if the market's dropped. $300 for 6 months of misery, for eating moccasins, for burying friends, for lying in the dark wondering if you'd ever see morning again. It doesn't feel like enough. Then again, you're alive. 18 men aren't. That has to mean something. One morning, Bridger announces that the passes are open. A scout made it through the last drifts. The route is clear. It's time to move. You pack what little you have left. Rifle, traps, bundle of pelts, clothes worn thin and patched again and again. A few tools, a few memories. The cabin that kept you alive all winter looks small in daylight. Grey, weathered logs, a roof sagging where the snow pressed it down. The banks that once buried it have melted into dirty piles, revealing how crude it really is. Ugly, primitive, a hole in the ground with walls. And yet, it saved your life. You stand there for a moment, remembering the smoke and darkness, the endless cold, the fat lamp flickering, wolves howling outside, William talking to ghosts, Jacob counting out food piece by precious piece. You expect some grand realization, some profound feeling about survival. Instead, you mostly feel tired. Tired, grateful, and ready to leave. Jacob steps up beside you. His hand is freshly bandaged, 2 fingers gone. Wells did the work yesterday, quick and clean. Jacob barely reacted. You ready? He asks. You take one last look at the cabin, the prison that became a home, the tomb that became a shelter. Yeah, you say. I'm ready. You turn your back on the winter and start walking toward the morning sun. Behind you, the cabin sits empty, waiting for the next storm, the next winter, the next desperate soul who might need it. The mountains don't care who lives or dies. They just keep standing. But you're still here, still walking, still alive. And somewhere ahead, spring is waiting. The journey to rendezvous takes 3 weeks. 3 slow weeks through a world coming back to life. Meadows greening, streams running clear and cold, wildflowers pushing through the last patches of snow. After 6 months of white and grey, the colours almost hurt to look at. Your eyes have forgotten what green means. You travel slowly. No one has strength to spare. The group stretches out along the trail, each man moving at his own pace, resting when he needs to, eating when he can. There's no rush. Winter taught you that rushing doesn't help. You just keep moving, one step, then another, quietly, patiently, toward whatever comes next. The game is plentiful now, and you hunt as you move, taking animals along the way and slowly rebuilding bodies that were stripped down to bone and sinew over the winter. Meals come more regularly. Meat is fresh. Bellies are full more often than not. Strength returns little by little, not all at once, but enough to notice, enough to remind you what it feels like to be alive without constant hunger clawing at you. Jacob walks beside you most days. His hand has healed, or healed as much as it ever will. The places where his fingers used to be have closed over, pink and shiny, the skin still tender and new. He doesn't complain, he just adjusts, learns to grip his rifle a different way, learns to tie knots with 8 fingers instead of 10. The work takes longer, but it gets done. Could have been worse, he says one evening as you sit by the fire, flexing his damaged hand slowly. Could have been my whole arm, could have been my life. That's the math now. Everything measured against death. 2 fingers is a small price. Half your body weight, you'll gain it back. Friends buried in shallow graves or not buried at all. At least you're not lying beside them. It's a grim way to think, but after a winter like that, it's the only way that makes sense. William travels with a group, but apart from it. He walks when everyone walks, stops when everyone stops. But he doesn't talk, doesn't engage. His eyes are fixed on something far away, something none of you can see. The 2 men assigned to escort him back east stay close. They make sure he eats, make sure he drinks, make sure he doesn't wander off into the grass and never come back. You tried talking to him once, a few days out from the winter camp, asked how he was doing, asked if he needed anything. He looked at you like you were a stranger, like you were speaking a language he couldn't understand. Then he turned away and went back to his silent conversation with people who weren't there. You don't try again. The mountains slowly give way to foothills. The foothills soften into rolling plains. The air grows warmer. The snow becomes a memory. By the time you reach the Green River Valley in early July, summer has taken full hold, and the winter of 1836 to 37 starts to feel unreal, like something that happened to someone else. A bad dream, a story told by other men around other fires, but your body remembers, your clothes still hang loose, your legs ache after a few hours of walking. When a cold breeze comes off the river, you flinch before you can stop yourself. That kind of memory doesn't fade. The rendezvous is already underway when you arrive. You see the smoke first, dozens of campfires scattered across the valley floor. Then the tents, the horses, the people. Hundreds of them, trappers, traders, Indians, gathered in the same place they've gathered for more than a decade. The smell hits you next. Wood smoke, roasting meat, whiskey, horses, unwashed men. Normally it would be overwhelming. After 6 months in a buried cabin, breathing smoke and grease and your own stink, it smells like civilization, like life. But something is different this year. You feel it before you can name it. A heaviness in the air, a quiet beneath the noise. The rendezvous is smaller than last year. Fewer tents, fewer horses, fewer men lounging around fires telling lies and laughing too loud. The trading company's presence is thinner. Their goods are spread out, their prices lower than they should be. The usual carnival feeling is muted, like a gathering where half the guests didn't make it. Too many empty spaces. You walk through the camp looking for familiar faces and find absence after absence. Thompson, who used to arm wrestle anyone for a jug of whiskey, gone. The French-Canadian brothers who trapped the upper Missouri, always singing songs you never understood, gone. Old Martinez, who claimed he could smell beaver from a mile away and had been coming to rendezvous since the very first one, gone. Some died in the winter, others didn't come back at all, gave up the trade, headed east, found other ways to live. The mountains have been emptying out for years. You realize you just didn't notice until now, when the missing faces finally add up to something impossible to ignore. Bridger is already there, sitting by a fire with some of the company men. You spot Osborne Russell too, the young trapper who went free. He's got a journal open on his knee, writing slowly, his face thoughtful and far away. You make camp near the river and finally allow yourself to rest. Real rest. The kind that comes from knowing you don't have to move tomorrow unless you want to. That night the stories come out. Around the fires, whiskey passed hand to hand. It burns going down, warms you from the inside. The survivors of the winter of 1836 to 37 start talking, comparing notes, piecing together what happened across those long, brutal months. Your brigade lost 18 out of 30. Other groups did better. Some did worse. A party that wintered on the upper Yellowstone came in with 3 men out of 12. A lone trapper who holed up in a cave near the Wind River Range made it through alone, eating marmots and his own boots for the last 6 weeks. He shows everyone his feet, missing 3 toes, and laughs like it's the funniest thing in the world. Another man tells of watching wolves drag his partner away. No ammunition left, too weak to fight. Just stood in the cabin doorway and watched as his friend disappeared into the trees, screaming. Someone else talks about eating his dog, a hound he'd raised from a pup, slept at his feet every night for 8 years. When the food ran out, the dog was all he had left. He says he cried while he butchered it, cried while he ate it too. The fire crackles, the night stretches on, and you listen quietly, letting the stories wash over you, slow and heavy, like embers settling into ash. But he is still here. The dog kept him alive one last time, and that fact sits heavy in the air as the stories continue to circle the fires. When the numbers are added together, they form something ugly. Maybe 50 dead across all the brigades. Maybe more. The worst winter anyone can remember. Worse than 1830. Worse than 1833. The kind of winter that doesn't fade away, the kind that hardens into legend, told and retold for decades, each telling a little darker, a little stranger, a little heavier than the last. You listen quietly and recognize pieces of your own winter in every story. The buried cabins, the fat lamps burning low, leather boiled until it's softened enough to chew, wolves circling just beyond the firelight, snow that never seemed to stop falling. Everyone went through the same thing, more or less. Everyone learned the same lessons, whether they wanted to or not. Survival, you realize, isn't about strength. It's about stubbornness, about refusing to quit even when quitting feels reasonable, about doing whatever it takes, no matter how desperate, no matter how undignified, eating moccasins, burning gear for warmth, digging through frozen carcasses for scraps of meat. The mountain men who made it through aren't heroes. They're just the ones who didn't die. The ones who got lucky, or got stubborn, or managed to be both at the same time. The line between them and the men who froze in their cabins is so thin you could miss it if you blinked. That's what the winter taught you. Not some grand truth about human endurance or the triumph of will, just the quiet, uncomfortable reality that life is fragile, death is always close, and the only thing separating you from the void is a series of small choices made again and again. Keep the fire burning, keep the chimney clear, keep eating even when the food turns your stomach, keep walking even when your legs beg you to stop. Just keep going. That's all there is to it. The rendezvous lasts 2 weeks. You trade your pelts for supplies. You get less than you hoped for, but more than you expected. The market is soft, the buyers say. Beaver isn't worth what it used to be. Silk hats are the fashion back east now. Demand is dropping. You hear the same thing from every direction. The trade is dying. The good years are over. Another few seasons maybe, and there won't be any rendezvous at all. Just scattered men working scattered streams, trying to scrape a living out of mountains that have already given up their best. The old timers saw it coming. Bridger, Russell, men who've been here since the beginning. They talk about the early days like they're already history. Rivers thick with beaver, high prices, the sense that the wilderness was endless and would never run out. That world is gone now, trapped out, used up. What remains are scraps and stories. One evening you sit by the river, watching the water slide past, smooth and indifferent, and you think about what comes next. Do you stay in the mountains, chasing the last of the beaver, while the trade collapses around you? Do you head back east, back to Missouri, and try to pick up the life you left behind? Or do you go somewhere else entirely? California maybe, or Oregon? Places where the future is still unwritten? You don't know. For the first time in your adult life, you don't have a plan. The mountains were supposed to be temporary, a few seasons of adventure before settling down. Somehow they became your whole world, and now that world is fading. Bridger wanders over and sits beside you. He doesn't say anything at first, just watches the river the way you're watching it. The evening light turns everything gold. After a while he speaks. Hell of a winter. Hells of a winter, you agree. You heading back out next fall? You think about the cold, the hunger, the darkness, the wolf eyes shining at the edge of the firelight, the friends buried under snow. Then you think about autumn in the mountains, the aspens turning gold, the air sharp and clean, the quiet satisfaction of pulling a prime beaver from a trap, the freedom of walking through country no white man has ever seen. The wilderness doesn't care about you, but you care about it. Somehow that feels like enough. Yeah, you say, I reckon I am. Bridger nods like he expected no other answer. Good man. We'll need steady hands next year. Not many of those left. He stands, stretches, and looks toward the mountains rising purple in the distance. It's ending, you know. All of this. Another 10 years and there won't be any trappers left. Just farmers and soldiers and missionaries, turning it into something civilized. Does that bother you, you ask? He considers it for a moment. Some. But I've had my time. Seen things nobody else ever will. Done things nobody else ever will. Can't ask for more than that. Then he walks away, leaving you alone with the river and the fading light. The rendezvous breaks up in late July. Trappers scatter back into the mountains, heading for their fall grounds. Traders pack their goods and start the long road back to St. Louis. The Green River Valley empties out, returning to the silence that belongs to it. You leave with a small group heading north, new men among them, replacements for the ones who didn't make it. Young, eager, convinced the mountains are going to make them rich. They remind you of yourself 3 years ago, before winter taught you what the mountains really are. You don't tell them about the winter of 1836 to 37. They'll learn soon enough. Or they won't, and someone will bury them when the snow melts. That's the way of things out here. The mountains don't give warnings. They just take what they take. The peaks rise around you as you walk. Vast, ancient, indifferent. They were here long before you came. They'll be here long after you're gone. And for now, you keep moving forward beneath them, one quiet step at a time. Whatever you do in their shadow, whatever you achieve, whatever you suffer, whatever you survive, they won't notice. They won't mark it or remember it. The mountains don't care. They never have. But you will. And that's your burden now. Your responsibility. To remember the men who didn't make it. To carry their names when no one else does. To keep Harrison and Cooper and the Mitchell brothers and all the others from vanishing completely, swallowed by snow and time and silence. Their names may fade from the wider world, may never be written down or spoken again by anyone who knew them. But they live on in you, in the stories you tell, in the habits you keep, in the lessons burned into your bones. The winter of 1836 to 37 happened. It wasn't a rumor or a tall tale or a story that grew in the telling. It was real. People died, people lived, and the line between them was thinner than anyone wanted to believe. You walk north into the mountains, into whatever comes next. The sun is warm on your shoulders. The trail stretches ahead, winding through open meadows and dark forests, climbing toward high rocky passes. Somewhere up ahead there's a stream with beaver in it. Somewhere up ahead there's a place to make camp, a fire to build, another winter to prepare for. But that's all still ahead of you. Right now, in this moment, you're just walking, one foot in front of the other, breathing, moving forward, staying alive. The same thing you've been doing all along, the same thing you'll keep doing until you can't anymore. And when that day finally comes, when the mountains take you the way they've taken so many others, you hope someone remembers. You hope someone speaks your name around a fire someday, passing a jug of whiskey, keeping the memory alive just a little longer. That's all any of us can really hope for. To be remembered, to matter, to leave behind some small proof that we were here. The trail curves upward toward the peaks. The shadows stretch long across the ground. Evening comes on, and the air cools. You keep walking. Jacob falls into step beside you. His hand is healed now as much as it ever will be. 8 fingers instead of 10. He's learned how to make it work. Hell of a year, he says. Hell of a year, you answer. Same time next year. You laugh, actually laugh. The sound surprises you, rises up out of your chest like something you'd forgotten was still there. It feels strange and good, like an old friend finding their way back home. Same time next year. You walk on together in easy silence. The mountains rise around you. Vast, ancient, unchanging. And for the first time in a long while, they don't look like enemies. They just look like mountains. Beautiful, dangerous. Home. Behind you, in a valley you'll never see again, a buried cabin sits empty in the gathering dusk. The snow has melted away. The logs are drying and cracking in the sun. Wildflowers push up through the dirt floor. Life going on the way it always does. Ahead, the trail leads toward the peaks, toward the beaver streams, toward whatever comes next. You draw in a deep breath of mountain air. Let it fill your lungs. Let it remind you that you're alive, and you keep walking. The stars begin to come out, one by one, scattered across the darkening sky. The same stars that watched over you all winter. The same stars that watched men live and die in these mountains for 10,000 years before you ever arrived. They don't care about your stories, but you do, and you'll tell them to anyone who listens. So the men who didn't make it won't be forgotten. So the winter of 1836 to 37 will be remembered, not just as tragedy or horror, but as proof of what people can endure, of what they can survive, of how thin the line is between living and dying, and how stubborn a person has to be to stay on the right side of it. That's the only legacy that matters. You're still here, you made it, and tomorrow you'll keep going. Your eyes grow heavy now, here in your own warm bed, far, from those frozen peaks. The story is over. The survivors lived. And outside your window, the world is quiet and safe and nothing like the winter of 1836 to 37. Sleep comes easily when you remember how hard it used to be, when you remember that warmth and safety and a full belly are gifts, not guarantees. So close your eyes, let the story fade, let the mountains slip back into memory and dream. Tomorrow is waiting, but tonight you rest. You've earned it.